In the clear blue sky, the sun's rays sparkled, butterflies soared, and flower petals swirled. Two children were playing near a tree on which a swing was installed, and one child's voice told his sister to push harder. With a joyful cry, the boy jumped off the swing into the water and laughed loudly. The fountain of spray he raised doused the girl, and she rubbed her shining eyes. The boy turned over in the water and swam to the shore where the girl was standing. The boy said that it was very cool and advised his sister to try it too, because she could have fun with him too. The girl thought that this did not sound like fun at all to her, but rather like committing suicide by jumping from a swing into a lake. She knew that her brother would eventually become the strongest in the world, and she would simply go to the next world with such a somersault. "Little sister," the boy called out to the girl. He repeated that the swings were indeed a lot of fun. He turned to the girl and looked at her intently, asking if she was going to swing. She exclaimed that it sounded tempting and, climbing onto the swing, laughed loudly and deliberately. The boy began to swing it and count loudly out loud. He soon rocked her so hard that she screamed in fear. A moment later, she was unable to stay on the swing and fell off it. With her eyes tightly closed and her hands covering her mouth, the girl sank under the water. "I don't want to do this again," she pleaded, looking up. She thought with horror that no matter how hard she tried, it was really impossible to avoid the predicted death, while the water meanwhile pulled her to the bottom. In her past life, she was an ordinary graduate student, a graduate student climbing a mountain with the rest of the lab assistants who came to demonstrate unity and cohesion. One of her companions, looking at the difficulty she was having in making this climb, remarked that if at her age she was already so exhausted, then things were bad for her. The girl replied that the professor simply had enviable physical health, so they could barely keep up with him. He was simply an amazing person, and she had worked her ass off in the lab the whole night before without sleep, and after that they dragged her here. She thought that if the professor had a conscience, he wouldn't have made them gallop through the mountains on Saturday. The professor noticed that nothing had changed here since he was a student, and now he had to take a couple of pictures. The girl said that she took great photos. He was pleasantly surprised and told her to try to capture the entire background. The girl started taking photos and said that the photos were coming out well. The professor looked great in the frame, but he didn't think that was enough. He wanted her to capture as many views as possible, and to do that, she needed to step back a little. The girl obeyed, but she didn't look where exactly she was retreating, how her foot was slipping and her shoe was torn. She fell off the cliff and started to fall. She couldn't believe that this was happening for real, that she would actually die here. The second time this did not happen to her, a strong hand pulled her out of the water. "Little sister, the boy repeated, shaking her as she tried to remember where she got her little brother from. "Enough," she finally said, assuring him that she was fine. She thought that it was no wonder he would be the strongest man in the future, because even now his grip was like a vice. He said angrily that she had scared him to death by pretending to be dead in front of him again. The girl said that she was just joking a little, nothing serious, but if it's not right to do that, then she won't do it again. She asked her brother for forgiveness and suggested they play something else. She thought that she shouldn't anger Kirian, because if she didn't please him in everything, she would hardly be able to save her life, because she was his little sister, or rather, she was Kirian's little dog. It started on that dark day in the cemetery. The girl's fate was being decided right over her fresh grave, and she herself couldn't even influence it in any way, but only listened to adults say that they couldn't take her, because it was impossible to take care of an orphan if you had 5 children of your own. In fact, everything was completely confused in her mind, because she said goodbye to her life for the sake of a good photo for the professor, and when she opened her eyes, she was already standing in the middle of a cemetery. She didn't understand what was happening, and the people around her were arguing, asking if they were going to shift the burden onto them, knowing full well their situation. Firstly, looking at herself, the heroine did not understand why her arms were so plump and tiny, and her height barely reached the waist of an adult. It was unclear why there were so many angry people arguing with each other, and in front of them stood 2 fresh coffins. The girl felt like an orphan who was left unneeded in the whole world, and it was a very bitter feeling. "Take her yourself," one of these strangers shouted, and the girl was pushed in the back. "No way!" exclaimed the other man and threw the girl away so that she fell. The girl felt like her stomach was tied in a knot. She really didn't want to end up in an orphanage, but she heard strangers discussing sending her to an orphanage, where they said there was a shortage of girls. Someone said that they were even ready to buy the girls. Hearing all this talk, the girl jumped up and ran away as fast as she could. People shouted after her. Orders were given to stop. Someone ordered to catch her. She ran without stopping. Because she did not know how else to act in such a situation, she was better prepared to wander, but she did not manage to run away. A pebble turned up under her foot. The girl tripped and fell, but someone's gentle hands caught her. A beautiful woman in a luxurious dress took her in her arms and asked if she was hurt. At that very moment, they caught up with her, angry people demanding that Reina be returned to them. The girl grabbed her beautiful stranger by the neck and screamed that they wanted to sell her into slavery. The stranger sternly asked her pursuers if this was true. They replied that there was no talk of any slavery and that the girl was simply exaggerating. One of the men suggested that the child simply had a misconception about what an orphanage was. The people the girl tried to hide behind shielded her with their bodies, and the man said that if they were going to send her to an orphanage, then there was no need to do this at all, because they were ready to shelter her. Then one of the angry pursuers asked why they should trust their precious child to an unknown person. First of all, they needed at least proof that they could raise the child properly. The man took out a bag full of gold coins and asked if that would be enough. This answer completely satisfied the pursuers. They said that, apparently, it would not be difficult for rich people to raise a girl. So Reina found herself in a carriage that took her away from the cemetery and the people who could be her relatives. The woman asked the girl if she was very scared, and then expressed regret that she and her husband had arrived so late. If they had arrived earlier, she would not have had to go through all of this. The girl asked if this kind woman knew her. The stranger replied that she was her mother's best friend. In her youth, Reina's mother was a noblewoman and quite popular in social circles until she ran away with her future husband. The woman said that what had happened now was a great grief, but Reina no longer needed to be afraid of anything now. The people who loved her would always be with her. Reina looked at this woman and didn't understand why she suddenly needed her friend's child, even though she herself had nowhere else to go anyway. She hugged the stranger. She just didn't want to be thrown out again. The house they arrived at simply sparkled with luxury and splendor. Reina thought that if heaven existed, it might look like this. They entered, and a little boy, whom they named Kirian, began to come down the large staircase towards them. "You're back," said the boy, looking incredibly cute. From the tips of his long eyelashes to his chubby cheeks, this boy was incredibly handsome from every angle. The boy's father told him to say hello to Reina and said that she would be a new member of their family. He told Reina that it was Kirian. They were only 2 years apart in age, so they could get along great. Kirian took a step closer to Reina and extended his hand to her. "Hello, little sister," he said, looking into her eyes. He looked at her and she thought he was so small. And he was so cute, I just wanted to pinch his cheeks, but out loud she just said hello and offered to be friends. She reached out and tugged at the baby's plump cheek. It was soft as a rice cake. Kirian seemed so soft and sweet that Reina just couldn't stop. But Kirian himself didn't look at her at all as if he liked her actions. That day she became his dog. It was her very first meeting with the strongest man in the world. Kirian was just seething with anger, and Reina apologized and said that he was just so sweet that she forgot herself a little. The woman put her arm around Reina's shoulders and noted with a smile that the girl seemed to really like their Kirian. Then she asked Kirian if he liked Reina. "Yes," the boy answered, and Reina simply beamed with joy. He asked his mother for permission to show his new sister the house, and this permission was given to him with joy, as the children found a common language from the very first minutes together. Kirian took Reina's hand and said that if his little sister came with him, he would show her her room. They approached the stairs, and as Kirian began to climb the steps, Reina admired him. She thought the boy was so charming in every way that it was hard to resist the urge to spank him on the bottom. Staring at Kirian, Reina didn't notice that there was something wrong with the step she was standing on. The girl fell and tumbled head over heels down the stairs. Karina didn't even turn around. He just said indifferently that they had to be careful on the third step from the top because it was fake. It was made that way specifically to scare off thieves. Reina thought that he could have told her about this earlier. They came to a bedroom, the decor of which was completely pink and so elegant. Kirian said that this was the room for his little sister. In a separate corner, there were toys and gift boxes tied with ribbons. Reina was absolutely delighted. This room was bigger than the entire apartment she lived in her past life. "Look," said Kirian, pulling back the curtain. The clouds of dust raised in the air made the girl cough, and Kirian laughed and said that these curtains were 100 years old. There was so much dust that it was impossible not to notice right away, so Reina suspected that the boy did it on purpose. And before that, he didn't even look back when Reina fell down the stairs. Looking at the dirty Reina, Kirian asked if everything was okay with his little sister. She answered with a smile that yes, and the curtains were very beautiful. Then it seemed to her that it seemed like he was still worried about her. Apparently, at some point she just somehow misunderstood everything. Kirian was still just a baby. He would not have done such dirty tricks intentionally. After a moment, Reina had to admit that something strange was going on. When they arrived in the bathroom, Kirian announced that there was some kind of magic here, thanks to which, if you simply turn on the tap, the water starts to flow in a stream, and the next moment he demonstrated to Reina how it happens. With an innocent look, Kirian asked why his little sister stood under the stream. The children approached the fireplace and Kirian pressed something. He said that if you press here, you can turn on the fireplace and the fire will light. Kirian laughed as he watched the little mishaps that happened to Reina, which she initially attributed to just accidents due to childish carelessness. But when something similar happened not 2 or 3 times, Reina began to have doubts. She asked the boy if he was doing this on purpose. But Kirian reacted as if he didn't understand what she meant, so Reina clarified that he was mocking people, and that wasn't right. "And what will you do to me?" asked Kirian, looking intently into the girl's eyes. He suggested that she might complain to her parents. Reina said that she would do just that. If he continued to bully her, she would just go straight away and complain. Kirian calmly replied that Reina had apparently misunderstood something. Even if their relationship deteriorates, it will be her, not his, who will be blamed. And here he was right, because she was not as fatally sweet as he was, and she was also a nobody in this family, so they had to rely only on the former friendly feelings of the Duchess towards her deceased mother. She really didn't want to be kicked out and sold to an orphanage, so she asked if Kirian hated her. "Yes," Kirian answered, and Reina asked why. "Well," the boy said and hesitated. Then he suggested that Reina think about this answer herself. "What?" Reina exclaimed, no longer understanding anything. She asked what Kirian thought she should think about. She looked at the portrait on the wall and suggested that the gentleman in the portrait do something with his descendant. The caption under the portrait stated that it depicted the 35th Duke of Istira, a title that sounded suspiciously familiar. Reina repeated it to herself a few times, then Kirian's name, and it dawned on her. The strongest man in the world and the main character of the novel that Reina read in her past life, that's who Kirian was. He had every possible quality and thing except humanity. He was practically a sociopath. And he had an older sister, a commoner, a homeless sheep who imagined herself to be the mistress of life, a vain woman with a high opinion of herself. She cruelly mocked the main character, her daughter-in-law, and then she was killed by Kirian. This is what Reina remembered as she stood in front of the large portrait of the 35th Duke. She thought that she hadn't done anything yet. She didn't understand why Kirian hated her. Maybe it was because she pinched his cheeks for too long. It was quite possible. Because he was so proud, he might not like such a shameless attitude from a stranger. In the novel, Kirian was so vindictive that he cruelly took revenge for the slightest offense. Reina realized she had just screwed up big time. But she had no intention of giving up. There was only one way out. Reina found Kirian where he was practicing archery. It was the 5th day since the girl had arrived at the Duke's estate, and Reina had planned a secret mission to please Kirian, even keeping a diary of observations. But so far there had been no progress in all of this. Kirian trained alone with a gloomy look. Reina thought that if she didn't quickly rehabilitate herself in his eyes, she would become something like that target for him. "Little sister," Kirian said as soon as he noticed her, and then asked what she was doing here. Kirian looked at the girl and said that he knew she was following him everywhere. Reina smiled and said that she just wanted to be friends with him, but Kirian sternly stated that he didn't want to be friends with her at all, so she should leave him alone. Reina thought that at this rate her head would be pierced by his arrows. It was necessary to somehow arouse his affection for her. She offered to pull the young master's arrow out of the target. She said that of course she wouldn't be able to train with Kirian, but she could do little things like that for him, he just had to trust her with it. The next moment, another arrow hit the target. Reina diligently feigned delight after each shot and brought Kirian his arrows. Kirian said that his little sister was taking too long. "Oh yes, I'm right there," Reina exclaimed enthusiastically. She brought him an arrow and admired out loud what a good shot he was, because what he did was really cool. The girls said that Kirian was very cool. No, not even that. He was so impressive and majestic that she almost fainted, crushed by the aura of his magnificence. She said that he was probably the best archer in this country. "That's not true," the boy suddenly objected, and with a didactic look, announced that the best archer was, of course, his father. Reina readily corrected herself and said that she meant that with his skills now, Kirian's title as the best archer in the future was guaranteed. She thought that she now looked like a courtier next to a tyrant. At least sycophants survive until the very end, which meant that she would also survive at any cost. Several days passed like this. Reina walked confidently towards the library. "And the things?" A voice came from behind her, and the girl replied that she would bring them. She thought contentedly that she had taken control of Kirian's weakness. Soon she returned and brought everything. She handed the box to Kirian to check. There were multicolored macarons in the box. "Excellent," said Kirian, and the girl asked about the fee. While devouring the sweets, Kirian asked if she was serious, as it was too childish. Reina said that Kirian was so big. Was it really that hard for him to give her at least one? Kirian replied that as an adult he would give her 2, and the girl thanked him with a smile. She and Kirian often saw each other like this, across the bookshelf in the library. These risky, sweet smuggling operations began with one incident over tea. Then she was asked if she had tried macaroons, a new delicacy from the capital, very sweet. The Duchess asked if Reina liked sweets. After all, according to her, Kirian can't stand them, so when she has a daughter, she will definitely treat her to macarons. The Duchess suggested that Reina try them as soon as possible. The Duke, the Duchess, Kirian, none of them touched the sweets. Only Reina ate them with gusto during her tea. Everyone probably noticed this. The girl beamed and said she would be happy to try it, and then thanked the Duchess. The crispy crust of the macaroons crumbled, and underneath there was thick jam. It was so sweet. The Duchess asked Kirian if he would have some. She knew he didn't like sweets, but his little sister liked it so much that maybe he would like it too. "No," the boy answered, not very firmly, and assured that he was not even hungry, and the Duchess replied that it was strange, because he was looking at the sweets that way. Kirian angrily replied that he didn't eat that kind of thing. Reina thought he looked like he wanted a treat, but Kirian said that sweets were only for babies. The Duchess said that in that case let Reina eat everything. Reina was glad that no one objected and began to eat the treat. Kirian watched the girl eat, and her gaze grew darker and darker. Reina suddenly said with a laugh that it seemed she couldn't handle it all at once, and the Duchess allowed her to take the box with her so she could finish it whenever the girl wanted. "Yeah, good," Reina said. She'd smuggled in sweets more than once since then, and it seemed to have a positive effect on Kirian's opinion of her. Kirian was secretly eating sweets, and Reina said that if he ate everything alone, she would bite him. Kirian adamantly objected that it was not sweet at all because only children liked sweets. Reina asked what was so bad about sweets, since she herself loved them very much. Kirian explained that it was because the girl herself was still little, and adults did not eat sweets. Reina realized that he decided this because the Duke and Duchess did so. The boy said that at the age of 2 he became an adult, just like his parents. Reina admired that Kirian had already been an adult for 4 whole years. He agreed that it was cool, and then told the girl to get rid of all the evidence so that no one would know. Reina said that she understood everything, and then Kirian declared that she was free to leave. "Little one," he said, looking at her. He asked if Reina wanted some candy and chocolate. Reina replied that of course she was going to tell the Duchess immediately because she suddenly had a strong desire for chocolate and sweets. Kirian stated that Reina was little, and she was not ashamed to ask. The girl agreed that she was a little child and could ask to be bought as much as possible. "Aren't you ashamed, little sister?" Kirian said. Reina laughed, then said that if Kirian needed anything else, he should just call her. No more, no less. Reina hoped that they could maintain such a relationship in the future. These were her hardships of survival. That day, a girl came to them and immediately asked if it was true what they said about Reina, that she was a commoner. "Yes, you," the girl repeated when Reina asked if she was talking to her. This little rude girl, Reina thought with alarm. She remembered that in the novel, this girl became the wife of Viscount Humphrey, a minor character. Reina thought that it was more expensive to mess with children. They would immediately reveal themselves in all their glory as soon as the adults and Kyrian left. If this girl wanted to play, then Reina would better shut up until the guest left. The guest smugly declared that Reina would never be able to hold herself as dignified as she did, and that it would always be difficult for her to be in high society. Reina replied that she didn't want to be in high society at all. "I can't wait to make my debut," the guest declared, and Reina said that she had no doubt about it, this little girl had the makings of a future socialite. Reina thought that she should gain independence before Kyrian came of age. In the original story, the adult Kyrian became filled with self-importance. He falls in love with the main character and plots to overthrow his father and usurp the title. With the Duke and Duchess exiled, it was only a matter of time before their adopted daughter was executed, and although Reina's relationship with Kyrian had improved significantly, she was unsure of anything. Now it was important for her to earn Kyrian's favor and at the same time save up money. Reina was planning to run away from here as soon as she grew up, and that was what she was thinking about now, so her guest exclaimed that she was not listening to her at all. Reina thought that let him yap, there was no harm in it. She didn't have time to leave because Kyrian blocked her way. The guest suddenly opened her arms for a hug and rushed towards the boy with a scream. "Where have you been? I've been looking for you for so long," she exclaimed. She pushed Reina away from Kyrian and literally unleashed a torrent of words at him. Reina watched them with great surprise. Kyrian glanced suspiciously at Reina, who was beaming with joy. Reina didn't quite understand his look, but it clearly expressed something. Suddenly, Kyrian smiled widely and said that Olivia could come with him. The guest crossed her arms over her chest and informed Reina that she was not going with them because Olivia was not playing with her. "Don't be bored, little sister," said Kyrian with the same smile. He promised to return soon, and his smile became simply dazzling. That smile was as if painted on. As Reina watched the two leave, an inexplicable feeling of unease came over her, and as if to justify that feeling, Kyrian returned alone. All the adults were very concerned about Olivia's disappearance. The adult guest looked at Reina and told her to tell everything in detail. Reina was the eldest of the children, and so the guest wanted to know what the girl had been doing all this time. She pointed her finger at Reina and ordered her to answer immediately. The guest was very angry and hung over the girl, screaming. Reina had absolutely no idea what to say. Suddenly there was a cautious cough, and Kyrian stood between the guest and Reina. He stated that his sister was not to blame. Olivia herself said that she did not want to have anything to do with commoners. Both ladies, the guest and the Duchess, gasped excitedly in response to these words. "But where did our Olivia go then?" the woman asked anxiously. Kyrian replied thoughtfully that she said she was going to the restroom. The adults looked at each other in confusion. The Duke said he thought everyone should look for her. The guest began to sob, the Duchess began to console her, and the Duke ordered people to be posted for surveillance inside and outside the mansion. Kyrian went to Reina's room and was now sitting at a table on which there were many sweets. He was very happy with them, because there was still an eternity left before dinner. Reina sat nearby and watched intently as Kyrian's hand reached for the sweets. "I'm sorry, Kyrian," she said carefully. She wanted to know if it was true that he didn't know where Olivia was now. "I have no idea," Kyrian said, his mouth stuffed with sweets. Reina wondered if he was lying, and for a moment she wanted to believe Kyrian. This was because this Kyrian was very different from the idiot Kyrian from the original novel, the Kyrian Reina observed diligently studying material that was difficult for a child. He worked hard at his hard training and never complained, always behaved like an adult, and was never rude to the servants. But if he is indeed the same character from the novel, then everything will change. Even now, Kyrian's gaze made Reina wary. If Kyrian really was the one, then Olivia could be in danger. Reina began to become seriously concerned about the missing girl. She turned to Kyrian and reminded him that Olivia had said she was going to the bathroom. She asked if the boy even knew which restroom she went to. Kyrian looked at her suspiciously and said that he didn't really like Olivia. His little sister clearly didn't like her very much either, so he didn't understand why they kept talking about her. "No," said Raina, and explained that Kirian had apparently misunderstood her. She liked Olivia. This statement surprised the boy very much. Raina asked again if it was true that he had no idea where Olivia was right now. She didn't want to witness a murder at all. She started crying and saying that she really wanted to find Olivia and asking Kirian to help her with this. Kirian simply replied that the girl was in the bathroom on the 5th floor. There was one bathroom for the butler, and the other was for the head maid. There was also a third bathroom in the empty guest room, but Raina knew for sure that the bathtub in this room was broken. Kirian explained that he told Olivia she could use the butler's restroom, but Olivia would never go to the restroom used by commoners. Both Kirian and Raina knew this very well. To be clear, it would be better not to go to the bathroom in the guest room. Alas, they say that the only thing worse than the devil is a fallen angel. Raina went to search, but the house was simply gigantic, so it took a long time to call Olivia. "Sister, maybe that's enough already. Let's go get a bite to eat. I'll give you some delicious candy," said Kirian, who followed Raina everywhere, and she wondered where this boy got all those phrases from the everyday life of child kidnappers in his arsenal. Raina said she wanted to find Olivia much more than she wanted to eat candy, and when Kirian asked, she explained that she was just really worried about her. Kirian asked again if she really liked Olivia. Raina remembered saying that and quickly rushed to confirm. She headed to the 5th floor, and Kirian followed her. "Olivia!" Raina screamed, throwing open the bathroom doors. Raina heard sounds and sobs and found Olivia standing in a strange position over the sink, her long blonde hair seemingly pulled towards her. "Olivia!" Raina exclaimed, coming closer. Olivia looked at her with tears in her eyes and asked her to help her. Raina asked her not to move and to stand still. The problem was clearly this strange broken magic that had taken over Olivia's hair. Raina said it would have to be cut. Olivia sobbed even more bitterly, begging him not to do it. "Wait!" Raina said, looking around for something to cut with. Her gaze fell on the letter opener. Suddenly she heard Olivia's sobs behind her become louder. "Olivia!" Raina exclaimed, turning around quickly. She saw a hand clutching long strands of blonde hair. Kirian held them, and Olivia, with her hair cut off, fell to the floor and cried into her hair. Raina thought with horror that he was just crazy. Kirian held in his hand the strands of hair he had cut from Olivia. Raina looked at that blonde hair in his hands. Ignoring the girl's reactions, Kirian smiled. "Little sister, I saved your beloved Olivia," he declared proudly. A sobbing Olivia didn't look at all happy with how Kirian had freed her from the magical trap. But Raina still looked at the boy and even clapped her hands, admiring out loud how Kirian did it, and then said a huge thank you to him. "Oh my God, thank you so much," Olivia's father said when the girl was brought to him. Kirian was declared a good man for finding the girl. But Kirian replied that it wasn't him, but his little sister who found Olivia, and he only freed her from the evil drain. Olivia tearfully objected that Kirian was mean, because he cut her hair almost to the roots. Raina agreed that it could have been cut not so short. But Olivia's father objected that she was wrong and told her to stop talking like that, since she was still the most beautiful among them. Her mother also agreed that Lord Kirian had very cleverly created a beautiful new image for the girl. Raina thought that even in this situation they were all just praising Kirian. She didn't know if he could have planned all of this. Even with such plump hands, he handles a knife and fork so skillfully, slicing a steak to perfection, it was worth watching. Not a shadow of remorse was visible on his face. The Duchess said that their Raina is so clever. After all, if it weren't for Raina, they would all still be looking for Olivia. The Duke agreed that they should all thank Raina now. A strange expression appeared on the guests' faces. "Oh, thank you," Olivia's father finally said. Raina replied that she didn't need thanks. She just did what she had to. Suddenly, the guest threw up her hands and asked for a moment of attention. With all the fuss, they almost forgot about gifts for the children. Kirian received toy monsters made by the capital's best doll maker and delivered here by air. The boy was invited to see how different they all were, among them a giant raven and even a dragon. Raina thought that these were just childish toys. And as a thank you for Olivia's adorable new haircut, Kirian was given some pocket money. The Duchess said they had also prepared a gift for Olivia and some pocket money. In the end, Kirian and Olivia were presented with gifts. Raina began to dream that maybe they would give her something too, if only she had pocket money, or more precisely, gold coins. The Duchess's hand fell on the girl's shoulder. She said that now it was Reina's turn to receive a gift. But the guests hesitated and said that they had no idea that another gift was needed, and they had not prepared. Since Reina was a commoner, it was probably not appropriate for her to receive gifts, but she dreamed of being a rich, unemployed commoner, so she just wanted to be given money, so she simply said this out loud to the guests. Olivia's father noticed that she was still a child, but already so greedy for money. Reina looked at him with a puzzled expression. Olivia's father gloomily crossed his arms over his chest and also looked at the girl. "What do you mean by that?" Viscount the Duke asked. The Duke and Duchess said that if the guests could afford to give pocket money to just Kirian, then they were probably in dire financial straits. They had heard rumors that the Viscount was not doing well, but he had not expected things to be so dire. Reina was immediately promised pocket money on behalf of her uncle. Reina was given a doll that was custom-made, the clothes of which were encrusted with precious stones, and the toy was made by a master who no one could surpass. The thought flashed through my mind that this gift was even too good. "Ha," Kirian suddenly said. Reina looked at him and thought that he seemed upset that she had received so many gifts. Kirian's gaze became very gloomy. The boy stared at the Viscount and his wife, and the expression on his face did not bode well. The Viscount and his wife were clearly very frightened by his reaction. Reina didn't understand why Kirian was so angry at the Viscount and his wife, and not at Reina herself. The boy was ready to rage and throw. Those two were in great danger. Then night fell. Reina, pillow in hand, crept down the corridor to the locked door. She was worried that something might happen during the night, so she asked permission to sleep here in Kirian's room. She decided to watch him all night to make sure that he would not commit murder. She tried so hard to keep a reasonable distance from him, while maintaining a good relationship. But all her efforts were in vain, and now Kirian asked why she came. Reina explained with a laugh that she was afraid to sleep alone. Kirian took the girl by the hand and pulled her along with him. Kirian said his little sister was a coward, and Reina quickly agreed that she was. They walked into the bedroom to the large bed. Kirian wished the girl good night, and she lay down next to him, thinking that if she held him, he would definitely not run away. Reina thought that the day seemed endlessly long to her. She felt like she was about to fall asleep, but Kirian suddenly called her. He wanted to know why Reina liked Olivia so much. Reina thought about it. She didn't know how to answer this question. Maybe it was because she was cute. In fact, Reina had already gotten used to Kirian's cuteness, so most of his quirks no longer seemed cute to her. One should not underestimate the iron nerves of a graduate student, as well as his sisterly immunity. Kirian asked what could be cute about Olivia, since she was so rude to Reina. Reina replied that beautiful people are easily forgiven for everything, and she thought that Kirian might want to take a look at himself. Kirian immediately asked Reina what she thought about him, and the girl confidently replied that Kirian was the coolest in the world. Calling him cute and patting his cheek was fraught with consequences. The first day of their meeting was immediately remembered, and everything else was forgotten. Kirian asked if Reina thought he wasn't cute. Reina replied that she swears she never thought Kirian was cute in her life, and the boy replied that she understood, then lay back down on the pillow. "Sister, good night," he said, closing his eyes. Reina thought he was incredibly cute after all. She thought that cat owners might feel the same way when their pets come to them for cuddles. Even though Reina knew what kind of man Kirian would grow up to be, sometimes she was so taken by his beauty that she became blind to everything else. She believed that everything would be okay again once Olivia finally left and was no longer a hindrance. When Reina fell asleep, Kirian sat up in bed and looked at her. It seemed she forgot who was in charge here. Her sister said that she liked Olivia because she was cute. Kirian simply wanted to punish Olivia for bullying her little sister, but in return he received disapproval, an unusually unacceptable level of disloyalty. Moreover, at their very first meeting, Reina called Kirian cute and grabbed his cheeks, and now she completely contradicts herself. Kirian hated it when other people called him cute, but now for some reason it infuriated him that his little sister said that he was not cute at all. Although it didn't matter, something else was important. The unchangeable fact was that the little sister was Kirian's only and precious subordinate. "Sleep well, my little sister," the boy said, smiling at Reina. "Oh, little sister," thought Kirian the next day as they sat next to Reina and read books. Olivia came up to them and asked if her sister wanted to go to the toilet. Reina replied that not really. "True," Olivia asked again impatiently. Reina agreed to go along, and Olivia ran off. Later, the children played a role-playing game in which Olivia was a princess who challenged the prince to slay the beast and rescue her. The prince was Reina. Armed with a wooden sword, she ordered the monster to prepare for battle. "If you defeat the monster, I will marry you," Olivia exclaimed, and Kirian stood between the girls. He got the role of the monster. "You will marry me?" Princess Olivia asked her prince, but Kirian also turned to Reina and asked what Olivia had done. From that first day on, Olivia would only go to the toilet holding Reina's hand. She was afraid of the wash basin, so Reina also washed her hands. Even a tiny spider, the size of a flea, had to be caught by it. So it turned out that Reina became the prince who would save the princess. Now Olivia asked if the prince would marry the princess, and Reina said yes, of course. A gloomy Kirian asked his sister if she would marry Olivia. Reina suddenly realized that in this game she and Olivia were the main characters, and the boy was written off as a monster. Kirian reminded that his sister herself said that he was cooler than Olivia, and the girl quickly agreed with what he said. Kirian said that then she shouldn't marry Olivia. The boy said that then his little sister should marry him. Reina was struck right in the heart by this and could only think how cute it was. Olivia indignantly intervened to say that her sister was going to marry her, but Kirian asked if she could buy more gifts than he could. Kirian said that a wedding is when you live together and give each other lots of gifts. The ducal couple often exchange gifts, even on non-holidays, so Kirian thinks that marriage simply means showering each other with gifts. "Okay, Kirian," Reina said, unable to help but laugh. "Oh God, what are you saying?" The Duchess's voice suddenly rang out. Kirian turned around at the sound of the voice. "Kirian?" the Duchess said excitedly, looking at the boy. She explained that the relatives would not be able to get married. No matter how much he liked Lady Reina, he definitely couldn't marry her. "Where has something like this been seen?" Kirian exclaimed indignantly. Reina thought that, indeed, even if it was just childish chatter, marriage was always an extremely important matter for an aristocrat, so it was necessary to explain everything clearly. "How dare you?" said the Duchess, but she did not finish the sentence, only saying that she herself had not noticed how agitated she had become. She picked up her son and said she thought she and Kirian needed to talk. The Duchess told Reina and Olivia to play in the room together, and she herself carried the boy out of there. Kirian, who was taken by the Duchess, was not seen for a long time. Several days passed, and Olivia and her parents went home. And then Kirian appeared. "Little sister," he called, climbing through the window into the girl's room. Reina was very surprised to see him here. The girl asked if Kirian was okay and where he had been all this time. Kirian replied that he was with his mother, but none of that mattered. He handed Reina a jar with something inside. Reina realized that it was the precious box of #1 treats that Kirian had been keeping. The girl asked why he was giving her away. Kirian said that it was the most valuable treasure he possessed, so he gives it to his little sister so that she can marry him. Wow, thought Reina, they've lived to the point where the romantic hero is already proposing to her. But at first he really didn't love her. She herself did not understand when they managed to become so close. Reina laughed and asked if it was considered a proposal gift. She reminded the boy that brother and sister could not get married. Kirian firmly objected that it didn't matter at all. He stated that he would marry his little sister anyway. Reina realized that these words could not be ignored. "Okay, fine, Kirian," she said with a laugh. "They can get married." "Little sister?" said Kirian, moving closer to the girl. He couldn't stay on the windowsill where he was sitting. Reina managed to catch him, and Kirian hugged him, and she exclaimed with a laugh that she saw how happy he was. She thought he was very cute. Now it was impossible to believe that in the future this little one would meet the main character of the novel and experience true love. It was wonderful. Reina thought she could hug him. She simply couldn't control herself. "Little sister?" Kirian said suddenly. He said that everything was bad. They needed to escape from the house. Reina did not understand what he was talking about again. At this time, in the room of the Duke and Duchess, they were talking about Kirian. The Duke asked his wife if a week spent under lock and key was too harsh a punishment, but the Duchess replied that she did not think so because he had cursed the Count's couple to go bald. The Duke said that it served them right. They wouldn't go broke, especially since they themselves said it was nothing. They could go home already. And the Duchess noted that too much effort had gone into making wigs for them, and Kirian also needed to be taught some sense. "Well, if you think so," said the Duke. "Your Grace, Kyrian just knocked out the guards and escaped," an alarmed voice sounded. "Sister, we're in trouble," Kyrian told Reyna and declared that they needed to escape from the house. That evening she had to dissuade Kyrian until the morning, who begged her to run away from there that very minute. The meaning of his nonsense became clear a week later. Reyna was dressed in a new dress that suited her extremely well. The girl explained to everyone that she looked so beautiful thanks to the Duchess, who chose her outfit. The Duchess laughed and said that today, on Statehood Day, all the men would line up to marry their Reyna. Kyrian whispered in his sister's ear that he had warned her that going to the festival was dangerous. He still wanted to run away together as quickly as possible. The boy still continued to repeat about his escape, but Reyna planned to run away alone later, when she had saved up enough money. Kyrian was reminded that he was Istira, and the holiday could not take place without the main character. Even Reyna, who had read the novel in her past life, did not know that the founder of the empire was the first Duke of Istir. True, having founded the country, he became bored with state affairs and pushed the throne to the chancellor, declaring that he would now be His Majesty and would rule. Reyna didn't even know if Kyrian was like that in her ancestor, but her father told them that today's celebration was planned to be special. After all, this was the first official event for Reyna Istira. And so the gates to the hall, shining with triumph, opened before them. The Duke, Duchess, and the young Mr. and Mrs. Istira were invited to enter. A large crowd of people gathered for the celebration of Statehood Day, and many of them looked at the girl whom the Duke and Duchess had brought with them. The aristocrats' views on the Duke's fake commoner daughter turned out to be even more revealing than expected. "Reyna," said the Duchess, taking the girl by the hand. "Let's go with Mom," she ordered. Reyna was extremely excited and even scared. The Duchess walked with the girl from one guest to another. She greeted them, smiled, and introduced everyone to her new daughter, Reyna. Reyna smiled nervously. There was no time to pay attention to other people's glances. "Hello, Countess," the Duchess said, introducing Reyna again, and then asked if the Countess's son, who was the same age as Reyna, had arrived today, but Kyrian didn't let her finish. "Mother!" the boy cried, but the Duchess said that the ladies were talking here, so it would be better for Kyrian to go to his father for now. She made a great effort to detach Kyrian from herself and send him away. "Long time no see, Duchess, young sir?" a voice rang out. "As I see, you and your son are still close," said the woman in a luxurious purple dress, the Marquise Magine, who approached them. The Marquise asked about Reyna, whether she was the adopted daughter of the ducal couple. Reyna smiled politely and said hello. The Marquise called her a very colorful girl. She assumed that the young gentleman was also apparently in good health. Kyrian asked if it was true that the Marquise Magine had more than just a daughter, and the Marquise confirmed it. But now she just brought her daughter here. Her daughter, Emeralda, also came closer. She had ebony black hair, violet eyes, and refined features. Such was the beauty Emeralda Magine, the main character of the original novel. Reyna looked at her and thought that they had finally met, and she had to do everything to become friends with her. This was again a very important moment. In the original, she, Reyna, was supposed to bully the main character until Kyrian stopped it. Now she could be kind to her, and then she could avoid her own death, Reyna thought, and the Marquise looked at her and said that since the girls were the same age, they could become friends. This was Reyna's chance, and when the Duchess suggested the girls chat, she happily agreed. "Come, Lady Emeralda," she said. Oh yes, she suddenly remembered something. Reyna asked Kyrian if he wouldn't go with them. The boy replied that he would stay with his mother, or rather, look after her. Reyna thought that perhaps because the story had not yet begun, they both did not care about each other yet. They were just children after all. Emeralda was the spitting image of the novel's heroine. Over a cup of tea, she suggested that Lady Reyna simply call her Emerald. After all, calling herself Lady Magine seemed a bit too formal to her. There was one difference from the original novel there. This heroine was the daughter of a modest baron, but she was loved by readers for her lively and cheerful disposition. And here was a quiet girl from the wealthy family of the Marquis Magine, so Reyna even suggested that the character's entire story could have gone down the drain. Emerald said that even though they had just met, she really wanted to be friends with Lady Reyna. It was a different charm than the original, but it was still very cute, and Reyna said that she wanted to be friends too, because in any case, for her plans to work, they needed to get closer first. Reyna knew all of this girl's hobbies by heart. Reina said she knew Lady Emerald enjoyed fencing, horseback riding, and archery. Ah, said Emeralda. She admitted that she was indeed training hard, but so far it wasn't going well. Reina was taken aback by the fact that her interlocutor's reaction was not at all what she expected. She exclaimed that it made no difference. The main thing was that Emerald enjoyed these activities. The heroes of the original story not only shared the same passions, but were also on par with each other in skill. They were practically made for each other. But it turned out that Emerald's skills had not yet developed. Then Reina asked if Emerald liked sweets. According to her statistics, children love sweets in 100 cases out of 100. Yes, I love you, Emerald responded enthusiastically. I knew it, Reina thought, beaming. But Emerald added that she couldn't eat them. Otherwise she would get fat, and if you want to be beautiful, then you can't get fat under any circumstances. Reina didn't understand what this little brat was saying. Emerald repeated that it is not possible to gain weight. Lady Emerald, Reina cried out excitedly. The cup of tea unexpectedly tipped over from the table. She fell onto the carpet and Emerald grabbed her head. She assured her that everything was fine and that she didn't need to worry, that her head just hurt sometimes, but Reina couldn't stop worrying. Emerald replied that everything was indeed fine. She wanted to continue the previous conversation and told that she knew one wonderful pastry shop. She herself very rarely goes there, but next time she will bring a gift from there for Reina. Agreed, said Reina. Reina asked Emerald to wait a minute. She would bring her some hot soup and something else to cheer her up. Reina walked down the corridor and thought, something was wrong here. This girl was not at all like the feisty heroine she was supposed to be. Reina was sure it was her, but she supposed it could be because the story hadn't begun yet, but the lineage was different, so she needed to take a closer look. At that moment, Reina felt someone push her in the back. "Oh!" was all the girl could exclaim, dropping what she was holding in her hands. The bowl of soup fell onto the floor and burst into tears. Reina had time to think that she was about to fall, but she was wearing a new luxurious dress, and she would never earn that much in her entire life working as a servant in the palace. The girl's imagination vividly painted a picture of how she would work for a year to compensate for the damage. She tried to stay on her feet, turned around, threw up her hands, and even managed to see her offender. "No," she screamed and fell anyway. "Oh," she said, leaning her hands on the floor. The girl sighed with relief she was still alive and well. "Ha, Lady Reina!" The stranger's laughter rang out above her. Now there were 3 unfamiliar girls standing over her, and one said that she had just pushed her. Oh, so that's what it was, Reina realized. It was a hackneyed cliché from silly novels, a mockery of young ladies. It was somehow too banal. Reina looked around, wondering what to do in this situation. "Wow, just look at this. What is this?" the guests might say. I didn't want to attract their attention at all. The offenders were just little girls. The stranger said that even though Reina was a commoner, pushing people like that without even apologizing was unacceptable, and on top of that, she had ruined an incredibly expensive dress. The second unknown girl said that Countess Lamira's dress was damaged because of Reina. The third, crossing her arms over her chest, asked how Reina intended to make amends. They thought they needed to teach her a lesson as soon as possible, but Reina said she was glad that her interlocutors were taking responsibility for this stain. She said that it was clear that the ladies had a sense of honor, and it was such a relief to her. She pointed to the shoes and said that they were special, made especially for today. Reina said that since she had been pushed and they had gotten dirty, the girls would have to pay for the damage. Countess Lamira objected that it was not like that, and that Reina had pushed her, but Reina continued to insist. "No, not me, but you," Lamira repeated. Reina said with a sweet smile that she was glad that her interlocutor immediately admitted her guilt, and even apologized. She was very grateful for that. Lamira asked what she was carrying, blushing with anger. Reina exclaimed that her interlocutor said that she would compensate for the damage no matter what it cost her, and she was grateful to her with all her heart. "No, it wasn't like that," Lamira screamed. She repeated that it wasn't she, but Reina who pushed her. The girls stood opposite each other and screamed. They attracted the attention of the audience, although they did not initially plan to. All the guests saw how the young lady made an inappropriate scene at the reception. In the old days, such a thing would have been unimaginable. Many of the guests were able to recognize Countess Lamira. Lamira was furious. She continued to blaze with anger. Reina suddenly switched into adult mode and thought that maybe she had gone too far with this child. In any case, it was time to stop. She told Lemira to let her know when the compensation was ready, but for now she was going to take her leave. "Stop, where are you running to?" said Lemira, trying to stop her. She took a step and fell sprawling on the floor, slipping on a puddle of spilled soup. "Oh, watch out!" Reina cried. She herself stepped onto the dirty floor very carefully. Walking on the slippery tiles was extremely difficult. She thought that now she would definitely fall. Suddenly, a completely unexpected character came to the girl's aid. He caught the girl and prevented her from slipping. It was a strange boy who asked Reina if the young lady was okay. Reina didn't understand where this noble prince on a white horse had suddenly come from. "What?" the boy asked, and Reina realized that she had asked her question out loud out of nervousness. Reina didn't understand what this story was, but she tried to say words of gratitude. At that moment, Lemira's mother appeared and asked who did this to her daughter, and then ordered her to get out. Lemira pointed to Reina and said that this was the same lady. Reina thought that Lemira was a terrible snitch, and she herself no longer wanted to attract anyone's attention. Lemira's mother was outraged by Reina's behavior and asked if she hadn't been taught any manners at all. Reina thought that since the adults had also intervened, things were taking a serious turn. She wanted to explain the situation, but it was so hard to hold back any longer. Lemira had crossed all boundaries. Even a graduate student's patience wouldn't be enough for this. The elder Countess Lemira asked what the girl had just said. Reina suggested clarifying the facts, since she had already said that the Countess's daughter had pushed her. This caused the food that Reina was carrying to spill. The soup spilled onto the dragon skin shoes that the Duchess had ordered especially for Reina for Statehood Day. Countess Lemira realized that this was a gift from the Duchess herself, and one made of expensive dragon skin. Reina said that this leather had to be processed for 100 years, every single day without a break, but she wasn't surprised that her interlocutors had never heard of such a thing, because commoners rarely get to see such a thing even once in their entire lives. She understood that. Reina remembered how they ordered shoes made of dragon skin, which even after 100 years barely softens enough that only dragon bone and teeth can cut through it with difficulty. The Duchess then said that her husband would handle the dressing in a day, and all that would remain for her was the design. So Reina thought that maybe her shoes weren't made for 100 years, but dragon leather was still dragon leather, and the damages would be quite large, although it was unlikely to be ruined by some soup, since you couldn't cut that material even with a knife. She announced that an official letter would soon arrive from the ducal house. The elder Countess Lemira clenched her hand into a fist, holding back her anger. She asked where the evidence was that her daughter had actually done it. Reina thought that now they would probably deny everything. The boy who had stopped Reina from falling put his hand to his chest and said he was a witness. He introduced himself as the Prince of the Kingdom of Xia and expressed a desire to confirm Reina's rightness. The Countess's daughter had indeed pushed the local duke's daughter. His words surprised Reina, and she looked at him with curiosity, wondering if he really was a prince. Reina remembered what the Kingdom of Xia was. It was mentioned as a powerful ally. The boy meanwhile looked at the people around them and asked if they dared not believe his words. Countess Lemira Sr. couldn't find anything to say to this, and her daughter hid behind her mother's full skirts. Then the elder countess took out her anger on her daughter. She reminded her that she had told her to behave decently, and now there was nothing else to do but apologize to the lady. The younger Lemira began to scold her mother with tears, but the elder countess hastened to ask Lady Reina for forgiveness, explaining all this by the fact that her girl must have simply misunderstood something. Everything was resolved with a few words from the prince. Reina thanked him and thought about the power of the situation. "Lady Reina," she heard. She turned around and saw Lady Emerald approaching her, asking worriedly how she was and what had happened. Reina assured the girl that everything was fine, everything was resolved, and then asked her to tell her if she was okay. Emerald replied that she was fine, but they just shouldn't have been separated. Emerald said it was their turn to dance and asked if everything was really okay. Reina assured that everything was fine and said that the lady could go. Thus, thanks to the prince's unexpected help, the incident seemed to be resolved. This is what Reina thought when she accepted the prince's hand. "Lady," the prince suddenly said, and then, quite unexpectedly, asked whether the lady would do him the honor of becoming his bride. Kirian watched this scene with anger. The Duchess turned to him and said that today he must give in so that his little sister could communicate with the other children. After all, it was impossible to ruin Reina's love plans from the very beginning. Reina hesitated, standing with her arms folded and looking at her new friends. Emerald extended her hand and said that it was time for them to dance. She suggested that they dance and have some fun. At that very moment, Emerald was surrounded by boys who ran up and wanted to dance with her. Reina thought that while she might be a potato compared to Emerald, she was actually a pretty cute potato, so it was bittersweet. "Lady Reina," said a voice next to the girl. The prince asked if he could invite her to dance. He introduced himself as the first prince of the kingdom of Xia, his Xia. Reina remembered him being mentioned in the original. She also said her full name, looking at the prince, and then thanked him very much for the long-standing friendship. This boy was probably Esmeralda's #1 fan. He kissed Reina's hand, making her blush. Yet the etiquette of this world made her embarrassed. The boy asked if this meant that she accepted his invitation to dance. Reina replied that she would like to, but she dances very poorly, and then asked if this would suit His Highness. The boy assured that it was no big deal. In extreme excitement, they began this dance. Reina understood that her level of skills could not suit this boy, but Hiss assured her that it was okay. He said that he would lead. Reina stuttered as she said that even she herself hadn't thought that things were that bad, that he really should invite another lady, but the prince said that he wanted to dance with Reina. Hiss said that he really liked Reina, and she thought that a prince like this would definitely break more than one woman's heart. And then Hiss said that he also knew Lady Reina's secret. Reina didn't know what he could be talking about. What secret? He said that it was rare for commoners to even catch a glimpse of such a rarity, as the dragon skin vest was said to be a family heirloom of the Xia royal family. After all, they call it the perfect shield, which nothing can penetrate, neither a summer downpour nor a hail of arrows on the battlefield. Even the fangs of the monsters could not harm him, and of course the terribly sticky soup couldn't do anything to him. This is the secret Hiss was talking about, smiling at Reina. He supposed that dragon skin shoes wouldn't be so easily ruined either. With a chuckle, Reina admitted that she had been caught, and Hiss admired how cleverly the girl had cheated. He noted that it was still strange that she liked lying. It was the first time he had seen a lady his age who lied with an impassive face. The boy reminded that he wanted to say something to Lady Reina. He asked again if she would do him the honor of becoming his bride. Reina said something very hesitantly. Just think, in just a couple of days she had already been asked to marry twice, something that had never happened to her in her past life. She confessed to Hiss that such an unexpected proposal left her dumbfounded, but the prince explained that, in fact, it was not about marriage. He spoke of the so-called arranged engagement. He introduced himself. He was the first prince of the kingdom of Xia. Reina thought about the complicated world of the novel. It seemed Hiss was not the crown prince. She had not made a mistake in her choice. The gist of Hiss's proposal was that, because his queen mother had been deposed, the succession to the throne was uncertain between him and his half-brother, the second prince, and Hiss wanted to strengthen his precarious position through connections with the ducal house of Istir. Hiss assured that in return he would fully support all of his lady's social endeavors. The House of Istira rarely participates in social life for its status, so its position in society is rather precarious, and Hiss offered to help correct this. If Lady Reina had any special wishes, Hiss promised that he would try to fulfill them. After thinking about it, Reina said it was money. Reina's condition was that money be transferred to her account every month in the future. In order to move out of the ducal mansion and live on her own, she would need cash, since it would be difficult for a commoner to manage the gold coins and things that were given in the ducal house. Hearing this condition, Hiss began to cough. Reina thought that perhaps her condition had been too much. But the prince unexpectedly agreed to it. He said that he could do such a small thing for his lady. Reina thought that this was the first time she had been so impudent. She even felt a little ashamed. She told Hiss that he himself had seen perfectly well today that she was not quite Istira. She did not even quite understand what use she could be to His Highness. Hiss bowed his head and said that he was sure that he and Lady Reina would definitely be ideal partners for each other. So he asked again if Lady Reina would do him the honor of becoming his bride. Reina thought that if that was the case, she simply had no right to miss such a chance, so she agreed. "Sister," Reina suddenly heard an angry voice. She turned around in alarm at the voice. In front of her and Hiss stood Kirian, whom she had managed to forget about today. Judging by the boy's appearance, something bad had happened. When Hiss started talking about the engagement, the first thing Reina remembered was her younger brother. They were just going to get married as a joke, and what if he started to hate her again and start to harass her if she agreed to get engaged to someone else? With tears in his eyes, Kirian asked if his sister would really get married. However, Reina could not have expected such a reaction at all. Kirian hung his head dejectedly and slowly walked away. "Kirian!" Reina screamed and ran after him. Even though Hiss tried to stop her, she shouted to him that she would talk to him later. Reina caught up with Kirian, who was leaving the ballroom. The boy said that she promised to marry him. He did not forget this promise of hers. Reina said that she simply agreed to get engaged to Hiss. She didn't know how to explain everything to Kirian. Even to her, it all sounded like an excuse and justification, but she couldn't pass up the chance to safely become independent, so she could only ask Kirian for forgiveness. Wiping his eyes, the boy asked if an engagement and a wedding were the same thing. Reina hesitantly explained that the engagement was only a promise to get married someday, but it could be broken at any time. The girl said that she couldn't explain everything to him now, but she really needed this engagement. Kirian turned around and asked if she was lying to him this time. Reina said it was true and asked Kirian to believe her. Then he rushed to hug her, almost knocking her off her feet. "Okay, I'll believe you," Kirian said, burying his face in her shoulder. "Thank you, Kirian," Reina said, hugging him too. Oh, thank God, she thought, believing that everything had somehow been resolved. Kirian couldn't believe that just a couple of days ago she promised to marry him. Now he can no longer trust his little sister. If he clings to empty promises, he will definitely lose her. But if that's the case, we just need to find a more reliable way than an empty promise to keep her. That's what he thought all those years they lived next to each other and grew up in the ducal mansion, during which time Reina turned into a beautiful girl. Kirian still spent all his time with her. He was always ready to wait for his little sister. A special day has arrived, the engagement of the lovely Lemira, the Count's daughter. Reina sighed, and the Duchess asked worriedly why the girl looked so sad, but Reina replied that nothing special, everything was fine, she was just thinking a little. Surprisingly, it had already been 9 years since she became Reina. Now she was 16, and in all this time she still hadn't been able to solve one mystery. It seems the time has come to find an answer to it. 9 years ago, the Duke firmly said that there would be no engagement with the prince because Reina was still too young. He said that at this age one should enjoy the carefree time and not think about marriage. The idea of engagement was completely wrong. It was a big surprise for Reina and Hiss. And so 9 long years passed, and now it was difficult to find a girl the same age as Reina who was not yet engaged. The girl feared that Hiss had become completely tired of waiting and had long forgotten about this engagement. The Duchess asked if Reina was upset with Lemira, who always insulted Reina at all receptions. The Duchess angrily said that if she continued to bother Reina today, then she should not pay any attention to her. Reina hastily asked the Duchess to calm down, assuring her that it was nothing like that. The Duchess said that Reina could even beat up the offender a little in the waiting room. The Duke and Duchess would sort everything out. Reina replied that everything was really fine, but she was very grateful to the Duchess for her concern. "Well then, I'll be going," Reina said with a smile. "Go, my dear," the Duchess answered her. "Good luck to you, sister," said Kirian. Kirian used to follow Reina everywhere, and now he suddenly grew up so much and said that they would eagerly await her in the hall. Kirian had truly become a true protagonist, polite and considerate, although sometimes Reina missed that mischievous little boy with his chubby cheeks and ringing voice. She joined a group of girls who congratulated Lady Lemira on her engagement and showered her with compliments on her outfit today. Emerald also congratulated Lemira on her engagement and said that she looked more beautiful than ever. Lemira thanked everyone for their warm wishes. The current queen of the ball hastened to arrange a wedding with a wealthy baron from an impoverished family. Lemira turned to Reina and noted that while it seemed like she hadn't given her any good news yet, that treacherous Lady Lemira had been tormenting Reina for the past 9 years. She said she was beginning to worry that Reina was taking too long to make a decision, and Reina thought that perhaps she really should be given a little lesson, as the Duchess had advised. But she hastened to assure him out loud that everything was not at all as it seemed from the outside. It was just that the Duke of Istira had too much tender feelings for her. "Ah, now get a worthy answer," thought Reina. She too had managed to learn a thing or two while communicating in the highest circles of the aristocracy. Lemira looked at her gloomily, not finding what to say. She pointed to Reina's wrist and said that her bracelet was too lavish for such a modest engagement ceremony. Reina agreed that her interlocutor was absolutely right. It just hadn't occurred to her. She asked if there was a secluded place around here where she could leave it. Lemira said that it was just a wonderful idea. She asked permission to take care of it. After all, it was her engagement. She would take the bracelet to her waiting room. There it would definitely be safe and sound. Yet such luxurious things truly suited only her. Lemira thought that Reina had completely forgotten about her humble position after all. She was a commoner, but she thought of herself as someone unknown. She once dreamed of becoming a worthy bride for a prince or the wife of a duke himself, but she turned out to have too bad a temperament, and she also did not know how to behave properly in society. She began to blame others for her own failures, and Reina came her way at just the right moment. Lemira tried on Reina's bracelet and thought that it actually suited her much better. "Truly, he seems to have been made for you, my lady," she heard a voice behind her. Lemira turned around. Kirian was approaching her. The young man asked why she was hiding in the shadows. Kirian took her hand and said that the bracelet looked so wonderful on her. Lemira was delighted that Mr. Kirian approached her. "To tell the truth," said Kirian. "He said he was very, very sorry." Kirian said that when he heard of Lady Lemira's engagement, an overwhelming sadness settled in his heart. These words shocked the girl beyond measure. For Lemira, this was the fulfillment of her most cherished dream. Lemira was trembling. She said that she did not understand why Kirian was talking about this only now. She admitted that she had also admired Kirian for a long time. It was a shame, she said, that even though she had given her word of engagement, she wondered if Kirian could agree to wait a little. Kirian said that he asked my lady not to worry so much, because everything would definitely work out. Now they just need to show the whole world a sign of their passionate love. Kirian said that it could be this wonderful bracelet that Lemira will wear at the ceremony today. The guests waited for the celebration to begin in the large hall. Kirian approached Reina and Emerald. Reina asked him where he had been. "My deepest greetings, Kirian," Emerald said. Reina noticed that Kirian looked a little pale today. She asked if he was sure everything was okay. He replied with a smile that everything was indeed fine, and then thanked her for worrying about him. Reina thought that Kirian had become quite an adult, and she hadn't even noticed when he had managed to grow so much. Kirian greeted Emeralda and asked how she was doing. It seemed that very soon Kirian would become the true protagonist of this amazing story. At this moment, they solemnly expressed their heartfelt gratitude to their dear guests for sharing with them the joy of this momentous day. A radiant Lemira said that today everyone is celebrating the blossoming of the first trembling love. Although these tender feelings were just beginning to emerge, Lemira believed that they were destined to become stronger and more lasting than anything else in the world. Reina couldn't understand why Lemira was looking at her so persistently, and why she had even put her bracelet on her, and it was also unclear what all this sickeningly sweet speech was about. It seemed that Lemira's fiancé was also surprised by what was happening. "Dear guests," said Lemira, "I beg you to support our ardent and sincere love." And then came the important and touching moment when the bride and groom had to light a candle together. Lemira thoughtfully picked up a huge candle. "Oh, be careful," her fiancé exclaimed. Kirian stared at the flame of this candle. The fire flared up unbearably brightly and shot up almost to the ceiling. "Ah!" cried the bride and groom, retreating. Reina looked at them and shouted something. The fire spread to Lady Lemira herself. "Lady Lemira!" Reina cried out as she saw the raging flames. "Help!" Lemira screamed, and nothing came to mind except to grab the glass. The water from that glass splashed right onto Lemira. It was Reina who rushed to the girl's aid and poured water on her. "What is this, Reina? This is all you!" Lemira exclaimed indignantly. She pointed at Reina and declared that it was all her doing. She asked what Reina did with the bracelet that made it suddenly catch fire. Emerald, who was standing nearby, grabbed Lemira by the wrist. She asked if this bracelet belonged to Lady Reina. Everyone saw that the bracelet was indeed Lady Reina's, and someone asked if she had lent it to Lemira. Reina remembered that Milady had promised to look after him instead of Reina herself, because she said he was too luxurious and not suitable for this ceremony. "Huh, what do you know?" said Lemira. She said that Kirian should explain it to them quickly because it was he who asked her to definitely wear this particular bracelet. But Kirian coldly replied that he had no idea what the girl was saying. "What are you saying?" Lemira stammered. Her hands involuntarily clenched into fists. "Milady, that's enough," Emerald said. She said that everyone saw how Lemira took the bracelet. Not only does she pick on Lady Reyna, who came to congratulate her in a modest outfit, but she also shamelessly showed up wearing her jewelry. Emerald asked Lemira if she was ashamed. Lemira muttered something and turned to leave. She slowly moved away from the girls, and they could hear her sobs. Oh, these aristocrats, Reyna thought. Truly, this was a people incomprehensible to her mind. Only power and self-esteem were their priorities. The guests were now discussing how Lemira would be ashamed to show herself in public. They were asking the eldest countess what she had taught her daughter. The world of aristocrats was a world where today's friend could easily stab you in the back tomorrow. Reyna had always known this, but she was quite tired of it all. She did not feel any particular hostility towards Lady Lemira. Reyna just wanted it all to finally stop. She looked at the bracelet and wondered if she had gone too far. Kirian caught that look of hers and thought that his little sister was blaming herself again. After everything she had to endure from Lemira, she still remained too kind to her. "Let's get out of here, sister," said Kirian. They walked out of the ceremonial hall into the garden. Reyna thanked Kirian for his support. He smiled and said that it should be so, because they were one family. Oh, here he goes again, Reyna thought, looking at him. For some time now, Kirian's attitude towards Reyna has changed subtly. He has become much more polite and courteous, but he no longer expresses his feelings as openly as he did in childhood. Previously, he commanded the girl, ordered her to bring him candy, and carry out other small errands. Reyna knew it was inevitable as you got older, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they had grown apart somehow. Reyna asked Kirian how it happened that Lemira ended up at the party wearing her bracelet. Kirian replied that it wasn't easy for him to pull it off. He declared that he had never known how to lie in his life and pretended to be terribly tired of it. And Reyna thought that now he was lying and not blushing. "So praise me," said Kirian, and said that he had a very difficult time. Reyna looked at him and thought that in some ways he was still as much of a child as he had been. She affectionately called him "poor thing," and then suggested that he go home and eat something tasty, to which Kirian happily agreed. In the evening, Reyna sat thoughtfully in her room. "I'm fine," she wrote with a pen on a piece of paper, and added that she would soon talk to the Duke again about the engagement, and then added that she was grateful to his for everything it was to the prince that her letter was addressed. She sighed, finally finishing writing. She thought that everyone around her was getting married, and she was the only one who could not get engaged. With only a short time left before the main story begins, she and Kirian are gradually drifting apart, and Reyna hasn't made any progress in her quest for independence. Tired of unpleasant thoughts, Reyna decided to put her worries and concerns aside for a while and go for a walk. Throwing on a robe, Reyna walked out of her bedroom and down the dark hallway. She didn't know that Kirian was standing in the hallway watching her. Taking advantage of the fact that the door to the girl's room was open, Kirian went inside. He took a letter sealed with sealing wax in an envelope from the table. "Everything is as I expected," thought Kirian, opening it and reading it. Letters from lovers ready to overcome any obstacles on the way to marriage never go without vows and promises, thought Kirian. But these letters desperately lack sincere warmth and tenderness. Kirian walked out of Reyna's room. He would like to know where the girl went in the middle of the night. Then Kirian went to the window and saw Reyna going somewhere. He thought that it seemed like his little sister's insomnia was getting worse over the years. He stood by the window and looked at the girl. Kirian thought that some kind of engagement was nothing, no problem. He would sort it out in a moment. At this time, Reyna was enjoying the warm water in the bath. After this, she will definitely be able to sleep without worries. Reyna was about to go back and suddenly realized that there was someone there. She assumed it was Kirian. It really was him. He said that he couldn't sleep at all today, and then offered to put him to bed. Reyna froze in shock at his words. Kirian entered the room and said that Reyna had also been sleeping poorly lately. He said that he could help her with this. "Wait a minute, you're a grown man now," Reyna exclaimed indignantly. Kirian explained that he had a nightmare and now he was scared. He asked if his little sister would push away her only younger brother. Reina thought he was wrong to think his childish tricks would always work, and she even tried to explain that she wasn't pushing anyone away. Kirian immediately stated that they were a family. Of course they should support each other. Reina didn't quite understand what he was talking about, but soon they were lying next to each other on the same bed, and the girl didn't understand how it happened. Reina thought that she had lost to Kirian again, and also that he wasn't as grown up as he sometimes seemed. The girl sighed, turning away, and Kirian glanced sideways at her. "Sister," he called out to her, sensing that she had not yet fallen asleep. He asked her if it bothered her that she was still not engaged to anyone. He then asked if this was the reason for her poor sleep lately. "Well, yes," Reina answered and explained that everyone around her was getting married, and her engagement kept getting postponed. It was logical that she was a little worried. It was strange to her that out of the blue, Kirian suddenly started talking about it, because usually he reacted so sharply to any mention of marriage. Now Kirian asked with a smile if he should help her. He said that he could talk to his father about his sister's engagement. Reina simply couldn't believe that Kirian was seriously proposing something like this. She knew that if Kirian asked, the Duke would probably agree. She said that would be wonderful, but she didn't understand why Kirian was suddenly starting such conversations. Kirian replied that in return, Reina would have to do something for him too. He reached out and touched Reina's hair. Kirian said that as soon as the girl comes of age, she will have to leave the duchy. His words discouraged the girl. "What do you say?" Kirian asked with a dazzling smile. At that moment, he looked like his little self, the same one he had when he proposed marriage to his little sister. Reina thought that she was planning to leave here anyway before. Death awaited her, but now, only exile. "Okay," Reina responded and assured that if Kirian helped with the engagement, then she would do so. "Great, then we have an agreement," said Kirian. Reina was just about to turn away and go to sleep, but Kirian called out to her again. He said that when his sister does this, they will no longer be one family. At these words, Reina felt tears welling up in her eyes. She herself did not understand why she was crying. Everything was going according to her own plan, but for some reason she felt unbearably bitter. When she talked to the Duke in the morning, he also noted that she was already 16. She was already an adult. He said it seemed like only yesterday he had taken in a little girl who barely reached his knees, and now she had grown so much. The Duke said that he would then allow her engagement. Finally, Reina was happy and thanked the Duke. The Duke looked at the girl thoughtfully. "Of course, my daughter," he said. He said that no matter whether she married or not, she should always remember that there would always be a place for her in the duchy. "Yes, thank you very much, Father," said Reina. So Reina finally got permission for the engagement she had been dreaming about. "Reina, congratulations!" Emerald exclaimed, running up to Reina. She said she knew how much Reina had been going through all this time and she was so happy for her. "And I congratulate you," said Emeralda's mother, approaching the girls. "Oh, Viscountess Maginée," cried Reina. The Viscountess said that she had long noticed that Reina and the prince were an ideal couple, and she also thought that it was time for their Emeralda to find a worthy man too. Reina said with a smile that she was sure that Emeralda would meet the most wonderful man. Reina remembered that Emerald was the main character of this novel. By the way, it was worth thinking about Kiriana. He hasn't been home for several days. Reina didn't expect him to miss even the engagement ceremony. The Viscountess also noticed that Mr. Kirian had not been seen for a long time. The Viscountess said that Reina must have been very upset after all. Her only brother missed his sister's engagement. She replied that it was okay, it was just that her brother had been very busy lately. And then she remembered that conversation. Kirian said that when that happens, they won't be family anymore, so he probably doesn't consider Reina his sister anymore. The priest announced the ceremony for which everyone gathered. The Duchess and Reina hugged each other with emotion. Then the prince and Reina stood opposite each other. "Reina," Hiss said, looking at the girl. He assured her that he would try his best and asked her to believe in him. Reina said that he was already trying hard, but she would do her best too. She was so indebted to Hiss. Thanks to the engagement, the question of her independence was resolved at once. Now Reina only needed to brilliantly play the role of the bride. Everything went like clockwork. Hiss asked if the lady was okay. He said she looked like she was about to cry. With a laugh, the girl assured that she was probably just very happy. Just think, they were finally engaged. Hiss said that he was also immensely happy then. Only after the ceremony was over did Reina realize that she had absolutely no memory of what dress she had worn that day, what food she had eaten, or what gifts she had received. She didn't remember or notice anything at all. The day of celebration ended and night fell. "Well, I wish you a pleasant stay, Prince Hiss," the words sounded. "Thank you," the prince responded and closed the door to his chambers. But it only seemed to him that he was left alone. He soon realized that this was not the case at all. "Hello, Prince," said Kirian, approaching him. Hiss asked what he owed to this visit, since Kirian had entered the chambers intended for him without permission. Kirian noted that the guest had received quite nice apartments he had known before that the Duchess welcomed him, but he had not guessed that it would be so good. He said that the prince was lucky. Hiss asked what Kirian meant. "Prince Hiss," Kirian said gravely. He said that Hiss had arranged this engagement with his sister for political reasons. Hiss asked what he was suddenly talking about. Kirian replied that he simply didn't believe in love at first sight, and as far as he remembered, Hiss and Reina had first met 9 years ago on Statehood Day. He asked how many times they had seen each other since then. He thought that calling it love was complete absurdity. Kirian suggested that the prince was seduced by the status of the duke's daughter, although of course he believed that his sister was not one of those who could not be so easily deceived. Hiss admitted that his interlocutor was right, or more precisely, that he and his sister had an agreement. Kirian wanted to clarify this agreement, and Hiss explained that it was a contract of sorts. And then the prince pressed his hand to his chest and assured that now everything was different. His feelings for Lady Reina were more sincere than anyone else's. Then he corrected himself and said that he now realized that they had been sincere from the very beginning. "Now the lady has become my bride," Hiss said, placing his hand on Kirian's shoulder, and it did not matter to him even if Master Kirian showed him such open hostility. The lady did not abandon him, so he will not abandon her either. Then he asked him to forgive him. Kirian laughed at these words. He asked what they should do with it now. After all, the same thing applied to him. At this time, Reina was sitting on her bed and was angry at Kirian. This scoundrel did not even show up for the engagement of his only sister. She wondered if it was really normal to be so sad because of some other guy. Although, of course, it was completely natural to be upset by the antics of one's only brother. Then she thought that since it had happened this way, maybe it was for the best. Now she would be able to break this connection. But still the emotions did not leave her. It was all too offensive. "Sister," Reina suddenly heard a familiar voice behind her. "It's good that you're not sleeping," said Kirian, approaching. Reina asked what happened and nervously asked if he had heard her talking to herself. Kirian cleared his throat into his fist. Kirian replied that he had come to apologize for missing the engagement, and Reina realized that he must have heard everything. She looked at him and said that everything was fine and the ceremony was perfect. Kirian looked at her carefully and noticed that it didn't look like everything was fine at all. The girl hastened to assure him that everything was indeed fine, and she was simply tired after this long, wonderful day. Now she would fall asleep in just 3 moments, so she asked Kirian to leave her because it was time to go to bed. Kirian chuckled and said that he also brought a gift as an apology, but apparently it wasn't really needed here. Kirian hinted that he had chosen something shiny, just like Reina liked. Reina said that since he had tried so hard, she would accept the gift out of politeness. Kirian turned to the girl. "True," he clarified, leaning towards her. Their eyes met, and Reina was shocked by the effect it had. Kirian's hands closed around the girl's waist. Reina closed her eyes tightly in excitement. Kirian pulled the girl towards him, and they were suddenly transported to a completely different place. "Wow," was all Reina could say as she looked around. They moved to the shore of a forest lake, the waters of which reflected the silver light of the moon. Kirian asked Reina if she liked the place. Kirian said he knew she liked slightly different shiny, pretty things, but he thought Reina would like this too. Reina whispered that she liked it, but not hearing, Kirian asked again. "I really like it, Kirian," Reina repeated with a happy smile. Kirian said that he actually doesn't regret missing the engagement that much. Reina asked again what he meant by that. Kirian replied that the only thing he regretted was that he never got to dance with her. He extended his hand to her and asked if he could ask her to dance now. Reina replied that fine, so be it, she would allow him to do so. They began to dance along the shore of the sparkling lake. Sometimes Reina had doubts, but her brother was sweet and affectionate with her. It was hard to believe that he would suddenly turn into the cruel character from the original novel. Kirian suddenly wondered if he had bothered his little sister much during her childhood. Reina assured with a smile that no, just a little bit. Then she admitted that maybe not quite a little. Seeing Kirian's expression, she said she was joking. Kirian was quite cute anyway, and then he asked what she thought of him now. Laughing, Kirian asked if he was cute now, and Reina again thought that it was impossible that this same Kirian would soon turn into a sociopath who would expel the ducal couple and commit a massacre. Reina replied that Kirian was handsome now, but he said he just wasn't amazing yet, and Reina laughed, saying he still had a lot of growing to do. Reina kept thinking about the original plot. It couldn't be that it was developing in the same way. She even suggested that the plot could have changed since she moved here, as if echoing her thoughts. Kirian said that over time, many things change, including herself. Reina wondered if she could really change Kirian, even just a little. "Little sister," he said, again distracting her from her thoughts. Kirian reminded her of the promise she made that she would leave when she became independent. He told the girl to be sure to restrain him, and then the day came when Reina had to do it. The girl looked sadly back at the mansion that had become her home, and an alarmed voice informed her that the lady would most likely need 2 more carriages. Reina turned to Eliza, her maid, and asked if she was planning to take all their belongings to the academy. Eliza was Reina's personal maid. She gave instructions during the preparations, saying that if it was necessary to take furniture from the ladies' room somewhere, she would prepare 2 more carriages. "No," Reina exclaimed. She didn't want Eliza to cook anything else. She thought there was already enough. The Duke and Duchess were watching their conversation, and the Duke said that, as he thought, Reina knew how to choose her servants, and the Duchess added that Eliza's salary should be raised. They noted that, judging by Reina's face, she was clearly nervous about entering, and then reminded her that it was not too late to cancel everything. The Duchess said that Reine didn't need an education at all, that children should play and have fun without a care, and the girl thought that they were up to their old tricks again. The ducal couple had an absolutely unrivaled philosophy of upbringing, just like one foreign rapper from Reina's past life, who believed that he had already earned enough money to support his daughter until old age. Let her grow up spoiled and rich. As a result, Reina learned absolutely nothing that a lady should know. She was not taught ikebana, music, or calligraphy. She wasn't even taught etiquette, and of course she was happy with everything, but it didn't seem quite normal. The Duke tried again to convince Reina to think again about whether she should enroll in the academy, because if she really wanted a diploma, the Duchess could simply get one for her. There was such determination in the serious looks of the Duke and Duchess that Reina thought they were ready to storm this rector of the academy for the sake of a diploma. Reina replied that everything was indeed fine. His was also at the academy now, and she would also like to make new friends. This was all a lie, of course, to reassure the adoptive parents, and the stories about how interesting the lessons would be were also lies. In fact, the reason why Reina was going to the academy was completely different. It was just that night by the lake that Kirian demanded that Reina absolutely keep the promise she had made to him that she would leave as soon as she became independent. It was these words of Kirian that determined what was happening now. She said that he had nothing to worry about. He knew that she would always keep her word. Kirian said he knew about it and thanked his sister. In fact, Reina really wanted to ask if they had gotten along badly as children, since Kirian loved her so much that he followed her around everywhere. But now Kirian was drawing a line between them so clearly that Reina had to come to terms with it too. So she told the ducal couple that everything was indeed fine. She would go to the academy. The Duke said that since Reina insisted so much, he could do nothing about it, but if she suddenly got bored there, she could return home immediately. "Okay, then let's go," Reina said cheerfully. The Duke and Duchess waved to her and wished her a safe journey. They invited her to come on weekends and holidays, and also reminded her that they would always be waiting for her. Reina didn't expect such a farewell at all. She smiled and said that she would definitely come. Their arrival at the academy was a big event, with everyone discussing the new arrival. Everyone wanted to talk about the arrival of that very Duke's daughter from the Astira family, so a lot of curious people gathered to see her cortege. They discussed these 5 carriages, said that even though she was from the Istir clan, it still seemed a bit excessive. They said that this girl was terribly spoiled, but at the same time everyone remembered that she was a commoner, so none of this mattered. "Oh, you bitches!" Eliza growled as soon as she heard all this gossip, but Raina told her to calm down and not stoop to the level of these gossips. She thought it was all utter childishness, and Eliza declared that her fists were itching, and then asked if all this didn't really make my lady angry. With the arrival, ladies suddenly heard Raina and Eliza. The bald man with a mustache who approached them introduced himself as the rector of the academy. His name was Master Grills. The rector explained haltingly that over the past 3 months, he had received as many as 20 threatening letters from the Duke, that is, asking him to take care of Lady Raina. The Duke had promised immediate reprisals if anything bad happened to the girl. The rector assured Raina that the academy was ready to welcome the lady with open arms, and to begin with, she was assigned a suite, the best one available. All the furniture in these rooms was replaced with masterpieces from artisans from the Eastern continent. Raina's uniform was made from the highest quality silk, decorated with embroidery to match Lady Raina's heraldic colors. Raina exclaimed that she didn't need any of this at all. She turned around and tried to run away. Eliza approached the rector and said that such zeal was commendable. She asked for permission, as a representative of the ducal house, to personally check everything and report, since the level of the academy was still far from ducal standards. Of course, the rector responded huntedly. Eliza was pressing him, intending to see whether the academy was worthy of accepting her lady. The students in the schoolyard discussed this unusual treatment of a commoner, as well as the abuse of power. Raina thought that if this continued, she would become an even bigger villain than the character in the original novel. Thus began the first day at the academy. It was spent entirely in fruitless attempts to calm the arguments between Eliza and the rector, so that, falling onto the bed, Raina thought that she would simply die. She simply collapsed, exhausted, having lost all her fighting spirit, and had no idea that the next day would be even more eventful. Through the approaching sleep, it seemed to her that she saw Kirian next to her. Raina forced herself to open her eyes. "Kirian," she muttered in surprise, and he responded. "Hello, sister," he said, and asked if she was awake. Raina couldn't understand why he was here. She wondered if she was dreaming. How could it be that Kirian had appeared at the academy? Kirian replied that it was not a dream at all, and then Raina screamed. She asked what he was doing there, since she hadn't seen him since their engagement. Kirian immediately apologized for this. He explained that if his mother had caught him after he missed the engagement, he would have been in trouble, so he tried to stay away from the house. Raina realized that Kirian hadn't come home at all this time. He replied that ever since their engagement he had been sleeping on the street, and Raina thought that he had been homeless all this time. She exclaimed that he must go home quickly because the Duchess must be beside herself. "Little sister," Kirian said earnestly, and stated that she had never in her life seen what their mother could be like when she was angry. He was afraid, because recently the Duchess had been buying all sorts of weapons. Raina could not imagine that all of them were for the re-education of Kirian. Kirian said thoughtfully that he had an idea. He wanted to live here with Raina for a while. The girl simply couldn't believe what she had just heard. She screamed that Kirian was completely out of his mind. What was he even talking about? But Kirian didn't understand what was so outrageous about it. Raina felt the Confucian instincts embedded in her blood awakening. She was perplexed by how 2 people of different sexes could live in the same room, especially since there was only one bed. Kirian, as a completely Western man, still didn't understand anything he said that they would be able to accommodate somehow, since both the room and the bed were large. And besides, as a child, Raina had often spent the night in her brother's room. Raina exclaimed that it was something else entirely, and Kirian said that it meant she had taken advantage of his kindness when she needed it, and now she was refusing to help him. A completely perplexed Raina screamed that this was all too inconvenient, what Kirian muttered, surprised by this reaction. Raina said it was shameful, then that she didn't mean it that way. She tried to explain that now everything was completely different from when he was a child, because Kirian himself would soon become an adult. Kirian sighed and said that since there was nothing he could do, he would go look for a free room, and Raina couldn't believe that she gave in so easily. He said that he would visit his little sister often. Raina only had time to ask him to be careful, and Kirian climbed out of the room through the open window. Well, thought Kirian, this was actually awkward for him. The next morning, Raina's first day of school at the academy began, where she ended up practically under Kirian's duress. But in fact, she was even a little impatient to start studying. After all, so many years had passed since she last went to school. "Lady Reina," a familiar voice reached her. Esmeralda hurried to Reina with joyful greetings. Reina rushed to her friend, assuring her that she was fine and that she was also incredibly happy to meet Emerald at the academy. Emerald was also incredibly happy to see Reina. "Oh, Lady Reina," Emerald said enthusiastically. She noticed all the things Reina had prepared for the classes and said that it seemed like her friend was fired up with a thirst for knowledge. Emerald thought that Reina was amazing as always. Reina replied that since she had entered the academy, she decided to show what she was capable of. She thought that she had the experience and confidence of a graduate student from her past life. Emerald realized that Reina was also very strong in her studies, but Reina replied that she would simply try her best. Emerald assured that since childhood there was no one equal to Reina in anything. A lady entered the classroom and said that her name was Miss Fours and that she would be teaching them the history of the Empire. Miss Fours said that today was the first day of classes, and it would be a bit unusual. Miss Fours was going to conduct a small test on the first day. She will call the students one by one to answer the question. Reina was horrified by all this because she knew absolutely nothing. During her happy childhood, Reina had no need to study at all. History books were mercilessly taken away from her so that the girl could read the love story she liked. She had absolutely no way of knowing all these things. The teacher asked other girls about the names of the 4 great emperors who took part in the wars and why the first emperor abdicated the throne. Reina thought that the answer to the last question was the only one she knew. It was because he had grown tired of state affairs and had pushed the crown off on his chancellor. But Reina wouldn't have been able to formulate an answer either, unlike Emerald, who was asked this question. Emerald said that the first emperor decided he couldn't just issue orders from the palace while his subjects were fighting demons. Therefore, despite having reached the highest position, he handed over the throne to his longtime advisor to personally lead the extermination of demons. Reina was shocked at how cute it all was, and Esmeralda seemed so meek and kind, but it was worth remembering that she was still the main character. The teacher said that Lady Esmeralda was right. She had stated everything very accurately and precisely. Reina didn't understand why everyone was nodding at this answer, but she wasn't given time to think, because she had to answer the next question. Miss Fours wondered aloud what other question she should ask. She asked what year the empire was founded. Reina thought this question was a fantastic solution. The question was incredibly easy, and there was a smug expression on the teacher's face. It seemed that Miss Fours had also received a letter from the Duke and was now in a hurry to show concern for Reina. The other students started looking sideways at her. But she only knew the date of the founding of Joseon, so she randomly named 1392. Her answer rang out loudly in the silence of the classroom. A confused expression appeared on Miss Fours' face. One of the students was clearly triumphant at discovering Reina's ignorance. Emerald was frankly shocked by this. And yet Miss Fours said that it was a brilliant answer, because they missed each other by a very small margin, since the empire was founded in 1786. But an important event also happened in 1392, so Lady Reina's words had some merit. Lamira raised her hand and asked what could have happened in 1392 in the empire that had not yet been founded. Miss Fours obviously had to choose between saving face in front of her students and the Duke's letter, so she said that Lady Lamira had made a very apt remark that had hit the nail on the head. She said that in the year 1392, the ancestor of the first emperor, His Majesty, was born, and without him, the entire empire would not have existed. Esmeralda assumed that Lady Reina, who had named this date, had some kind of tactic. Reina thought that she really wanted to go back home already. After class, the ladies were gathered in the courtyard and asked to recall one of the Academy's mottos. Nobility obliges, or rather noble origin obliges. Madame Janet, the ladies' class teacher, explained that what they were all here for today was closely related to this motto. The discussion was about preparations for the annual charity ball. The annual charity ball was such a famous event that aristocrats from all over the world attended it, and newspapers wrote articles about it. For young ladies, this was an excellent opportunity to prove themselves in the organization of receptions, the most important skill of a social lady, and to significantly strengthen their position in high society. Madame Janet said that there would be 2 charity balls this year, and 12 young ladies had gathered there, whom she would divide into 2 teams of 6. Madame Janet asked if anyone would like to volunteer to be the team leader, and Reina immediately volunteered. Everyone was surprised that she did it. The girls assumed that Lady Reina was unlikely to understand receptions, although the main thing for organizing a party was money, and she arrived yesterday in as many as 5 carriages. Everyone thought that Lady Reina's fortune was unrivaled, and Reina thought that Eliza had done the right thing in offering to take 5 carriages. Reina thought that it was time for her to start slowly increasing her influence in order to help Hiss become the crown prince. She had to at least work off the money she received for the contract. Madame Janet said that it was fine. Lady Reina would be the head of one team, but now it was necessary to choose the second. "I'll try," said another girl. It was Lemira, and she promised to contribute generously to ensure that everything would go off without a hitch. Reina thought that it was her eternal rival again, whose family hadn't gone broke at the wedding, so she clearly had enough money for everything. So the decision was made. 2 team leaders had been appointed, and Madame Janet was now looking forward to the evenings they would organize. This is how this first day, full of impressions, passed. In the evening, Kirian came into Reina's room and, while devouring sweets, asked what was bothering her. Reina thought he was making himself at home, even though this was actually her room. Reina, who had been tormented by remorse for throwing her brother out to spend the night in an unknown place, eventually allowed him to stay, but now she was not going to tolerate his questions. She wanted him to come home as soon as possible. Kirian stated that this was out of the question if his little sister was in such a difficult situation, then he simply had to be there. Kirian suddenly stood up, walked over to Reina and took the comb from her hands, offering to help her. Reina couldn't figure out what was going on in her brother's mind. Kirian said that it all reminded him very much of his childhood. Even though there was an invisible boundary between them that hadn't been there before, Reina thought that in Kirian's memory, she still seemed to be his little sister. Kirian started combing her hair and asked what was bothering her, and Reina replied that today she became the leader of the team preparing for the charity ball. Tomorrow she needs to recruit participants, so she is wondering if she will be able to put together a good team. Kirian asked if he could help her, but Reina could hardly imagine how exactly he was going to help her. Kirian replied that he would somehow be able to help his little sister because he could do anything. "So ladies, pay attention," Madame Janet announced the next day, in which the heads of the teams were to recruit members to jointly prepare the ball. As in previous years, the team will be determined by a game of rock, paper, scissors, a flawless method with no possibility of rigging. The winner of each round will select one participant. The girls stood opposite each other and began the game. The first round went to Lady Reina. Reina screamed with joy. Lemira said she just gave in once, and Reina chose Lady Majine, and Emerald happily joined her. Lemira gritted her teeth at such impudence. They continued the game to make the next choice. This time Lady Lemira won. It was already clear to everyone who exactly would be chosen next time. And the next participant to be named was Lady Andover, as expected. There were rumors that the Earl of Andover's family had recently made a fortune in a certain affair, so Lady Lemira clearly preferred money to friendly relations with other ladies. Lemira's friends explained this decision by saying that Lemira always has everything thought out and calculated in advance, but Reina thought that these spineless people had just lost money. A new round of the game has begun. When the last round was over, Lemira said with a smile that she was sorry for having just won it. She won in the very last round. Reina congratulated her on this victory. Lady Lemira would never have guessed that Reina had deliberately won only in the very first round, and then kept giving in. Reina assumed that Lady Lemira would primarily choose girls from wealthy families, but her own plan required precisely those kinds of ladies. She was more interested in girls from small houses or the provinces, but if she constantly, when winning, chose only girls of low status, it would arouse suspicion. So losing was part of her strategy. That evening, before the choice, Reina asked Kirian if he could tell her who Lady Lemira was going to choose. Or rather, Kirian himself guessed what kind of help she might need, and Reina suspected that he simply knew how to read minds. Kirian, in response, was only surprised that she didn't know about it until now. For a moment, Reina was afraid that he knew the most intimate things about her too, but a moment later, Kirian admitted that he was joking. He even apologized, although he laughed at how easy it was to fool Reina. Reina asked him how he would know then. Kirian replied that nothing could be more obvious. Raina thought that Kirian had always possessed a truly terrifying insight. He could easily predict Lady Lemira's every move from her slightest movement, so that, having taken advantage of his advice, Raina thought that he was a good man, and she would never argue with him on such matters again. Lemira had to choose the last participant. Everyone suspected that it would be her close friend, Lady Douglas. Only Lemira named Lady Melena's name. The chosen participant couldn't believe her name was called. Lemira told her that she really wanted to work with Lady Melena. Lady Lemira abandoned her best friend Lady Douglas in favor of Lady Melena. Even Raina didn't expect this, but she decided that it wasn't that scary after all. Raina greeted her team and announced that she was glad that they would be preparing for the ball together, and for her part, she promised to do her best to make their event a success. The main preparations were supposed to start tomorrow. Raina said with a cheerful smile that they would meet at the main gate after class. Lemira, meanwhile, turned to Lady Douglas and asked if she understood that this charity ball must be a success. Lemira said that Lady Melena may look unprepossessing, but her mother, the Countess, is considered a style icon in high society. Lady Douglas hesitated, searching for words for a worthy response. Lemira said she had her own reasons for sending Lady Douglas to another team. She asked Lady Douglas to trust her and their long-standing friendship. She just wanted her friend to spy on that team. After all, this was a competition between the Academy balls, and it couldn't be allowed for some commoner to ruin everything. Therefore, Lemira asked Lady Douglas to keep her informed of all the plans of that plebeian, and if everything went smoothly, then Lady Douglas would receive a reward. Lemira promised to introduce Lady Douglas to a fine gentleman from her fiancé's circle. Lady Douglas could not believe that her friend was seriously proposing such a thing. Lemira said that it would not be difficult for her, and Lady Douglas would render her such an important service. She promised Lady Lemira that she would try her best. Unbeknownst to both ladies, Kirian was lurking on a tree branch directly above them, and it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to keep from sneezing. Those girls downstairs were making so much noise. The next day, everyone gathered at the main gate to put Raina's plan into action. The girls were riding in the carriage, and some of them pressed their eyes to the window with anxiety. Looking out the window at the scenery, one participant asked if Lady Raina was sure they were going in the right direction. Raina said that no one should doubt that everything is going as it should. Raina assured them that they would arrive soon, and Lady Douglas asked if they were really going to prepare for the ball. Raina laughingly promised that the ladies would soon see everything for themselves, but then she was interrupted by loud cursing. There were screams from outside, but Raina repeated that the place was safe. "Oh," she said suddenly. Raina said that they had arrived and it was time to go. Raina was the first to step onto the muddy ground as she exited the carriage. She turned to her companions and urged them to get out quickly so that they would not be late. Once everyone had gotten out of the carriage, Raina said that since everyone was here, they could go. Lady Emeralda's hands, who walked in front, trembled. She carefully tried to check whether her assumptions were correct. Lady Douglas said outright that it was St. Margaret's. Raina confirmed that this was indeed the case, and then asked what they thought about it. It was an orphanage dedicated to St. Margaret, and this was where she intended to hold their charity ball. Soon the girls were working with the children, showing them how to hold a pen correctly so that their hands would get tired less. We taught the kids how to write their own name on a piece of paper. All the ladies were busy with the children. Only Lady Douglas sat with her arms folded across her chest and took no part in what was happening. Lady Douglas really wanted Raina to finally explain to her what kind of nonsense was going on here. Raina replied that these were the very noble duties, the motto of their academy, and the reason why they were throwing the charity ball. To bring this to life, Raina intended to make the theme of this ball education for the common people, with all the ladies becoming temporary teachers and teaching children. "Teacher!" one of the girls suddenly exclaimed. The girl wanted to ask Lady Douglas if she had written everything correctly. The girl wanted to disturb Lady Douglas, but she stopped her movement. "Where are you sticking your dirty hands?" Lady Douglas exclaimed angrily. The girl got scared and froze with her hand raised, but Raina noticed it too and shouted at Lady Douglas. She stopped her hand and did not let her push the child away. Raina declared Lady Douglas unfit to be a teacher and demanded that she leave immediately. "Ha!" cried Lady Douglas. She had no desire to teach these little ragamuffins anything. Raina grabbed her hand and pulled her out of the room. Raina swung the door open with a slap of her palm. "How dare you!" cried Lady Douglas. Reina told her to sit in the carriage or stand in the street as she liked, but that she was not to dare to set foot in that classroom again. "How dare you?" Lady Douglas repeated angrily. The door behind her slammed shut. Reina asked for forgiveness from Enna, the girl who angered Lady Douglas. Reina asked if the girl was very scared. Enna replied that everything was fine. She was often called that. She laughed and said she knew she was dirty. Reina felt herself trembling. Reina whispered to the girl that she was about to tell her a big secret. She said that, in fact, this teacher had not washed for several months. Enna couldn't believe what she had just heard. She exclaimed that the lady had called her dirty, while she herself was no better. Reina explained that the lady was just using perfume, so it wasn't noticeable, but if you got close, the smell hit your nose, and she pushed Enna away, afraid that she would smell it. Enna asked why the lady hadn't washed for so long. Reina didn't immediately know what to think of, but then she answered that Lady Douglas had once almost drowned and was now very afraid of water, to such an extent that she could not bear its touch. So that's it, Enna thought, and felt very sorry for this poor teacher, although Reina just wanted the girl not to be too upset about everything that had happened. As their carriage left the shelter, the ladies shared with each other what an unusual experience they had had that day. The girls said that everything went much more fun than they thought. Emerald admitted that her student did not listen, and she had to scold her. The other ladies noted how impressive she looked when she scolded her. Reina thought everyone had done well, even though they had whined at first, apparently due to the fact that these girls had spent their entire lives with home tutors. And only Lady Douglas snorted dismissively and asked what was so good about these dirty children. But Reina didn't answer. She simply told the other ladies that they had all done a great job today. She gave all the ladies gifts that she had prepared as a token of her gratitude to them. The packages contained jewelry. Some of the girls had never seen such beautiful brooches before and had never worn rings with real diamonds. One of the ladies asked Reina if they could really accept such expensive and luxurious gifts from her. The carriage continued rolling along the road and stopped at the gates of the academy. Reina explained that these were not gifts, but payment for a job well done today. They were going to repeat it all next week, and therefore had to gather at the gate again. And only Lady Douglas was left alone, without gifts and without communication with the others. She simply showed with her whole being that she was up to something. Eliza asked Reina whether it was worth following this lady at all. Reina thought that none of this mattered. No matter what she came up with, nothing would work. Lady Douglas was in a hurry to meet Lemira. She told her everything, and she began to laugh for a long time in response. She was amused by the story about the orphanage. How could one rehearse a ball in such a place? But Reina was clearly quite at home there. Lemira said she had no idea what kind of stupid plan she had, but even that couldn't be allowed to go through. Lemira told Lady Douglas to make such a mess next time that she wouldn't be able to set foot in the orphanage. What was needed was a pogrom. If what happened today were to happen again, the desks could be overturned, then this imposter's plan would fail, and Lady Douglas would feel better. Lemira thought that all this sounded great. Lady Douglas thought about today, about the jewelry that everyone had received except her. At this time, Eliza stood at the mistress's door, guarding her. The girl was very vigilant in observing everything that was happening around her. The door began to open slowly. Eliza raised her dagger in front of her and rushed into the attack, shouting that her prey had been caught. But this attack was stopped by another, more skillful and dexterous hand. Eliza saw the face of the one she tried to detain. It was a dazzlingly smiling Kirian who greeted her. Eliza asked him why he was in Lady Reina's room and why he had sneaked in when the lady herself was not at home. Kirian asked Eliza to calm down, because Reina herself allowed him to, out of pity for him, a homeless person. She sheltered him for a while. Kirian asked if Eliza knew that he was the heir to the family she served. Then he said that he was not looking for Eliza for that reason at all. He noticed that one noble girl was trying to set up her sister. Eliza asked angrily who dared, expressing a desire to tear the man to shreds. Kirian thought that all this was too tiring for him. He knew his sister wouldn't like it, so they should just leave it at that. He'd handle it himself. Kirian said he needed Eliza's help with something else. In vain did Reina tell Eliza that she did not have to go with her. But with a burning gaze, Eliza objected to her, saying that she was a little offended by her. She should have accompanied the lady from the very beginning, because her job was to protect Reina. Reina could have said that Eliza was hired as just a servant, but she already understood everything, so she said that since Eliza came anyway, she might as well teach the children something. Eliza said that she could explain how to break bones, how to set bones, how to paralyze a person with 2 fingers. She was ready to explain to the children whatever the mistress considered necessary. In the courtyard of the Lady Douglas orphanage, the same girl, Enna, called out to her. Lady Douglas angrily asked what the girl wanted, and Enna replied that she had a present for the teacher. Reina didn't have time to stop it and looked at Eliza. The battle-maid froze, awaiting orders. "You," Lady Douglas said at that moment, looking at Enna. She was clearly furious at what the girl brought her. "Wait!" Eliza screamed and ran towards them. She managed to deftly cover Lady Douglas's mouth with her hand, and Reina turned to Enna and expressed delight at the gift, and then asked what it was. It was a very beautiful, carefully decorated water bottle, and Enna explained that she wanted to help the teacher overcome her fear of water. As soon as Eliza loosened her grip, Lady Douglas tried to ask what kind of cheap stuff it was. Reina told Enna that Teacher Douglas wanted to say that this was not a cheap gift, and that she was very grateful for such a valuable gift. "True?" Enna happily asked again, and said that yesterday she heard a story about a teacher who had not washed for several months because of her fear of water. Enna felt so sorry for her. Lady Douglas tried to dispute these words, but Eliza did not allow her to do so, and Reina told the girl that Teacher Douglas was so touched that Enna was worried about her. Everyone avoided the teacher, but Enna was the first to take care of her. Enna said touchingly that she was sorry that the teacher had no friends at all. Enna extended her hand to Lady Douglas. She hastened to assure her that everything would be fine now, because now she would become her friend. From that day on, Enna simply did not leave Lady Douglas alone, bringing her water so that she could drink. She called her to come with her when she was about to go water the flowers in the flower bed. She saved the juice that they treated her to and brought it to Lady Douglas to drink. Lady Douglas could only thank Anne for all her care. After all, the whole time she was communicating with the girl, the shadow of Eliza, who was in a very angry and determined mood, was looming somewhere nearby. Lady Douglas told Anne that she was very sorry, but it was time for the teacher to go home. Enna agreed that she felt sorry too, and then told her that thanks to the teacher, she had had a lot of fun today. Enna said that she was her friend, and even if the teacher did not wash for 100 years, she still would not turn away from her. Enna squeezed Lady Douglas's hand with her small hands and invited her to come and play again. "Okay, agreed," I had to tell Lady Douglas, but she wanted to tell everyone something else. She didn't smell at all. She said that next time everyone could smell it for themselves. Enna said that the teacher need not be embarrassed, and Lady Douglas declared that indeed it did not smell at all. Enna said she would be very glad to see her again next week. Reina smiled as she watched the scene. Reina told Lady Douglas that she had done a great job today, so she was entitled to receive a gift from her like everyone else, and she was also expecting her next week. Lady Emeralda sat on the bed and looked out the window. "Emeralda, answer," they called to her, and she turned around quickly and sadly. The mother leaned over her and repeated the same question again. She wanted to know why she wasn't the main organizer of the charity ball, but Emerald could only stammer out her apologies to her mother. "Do you think I came here to hear an apology?" asked the Marquise de Magne. She could still understand how to give in to the Duke's daughter, but how could she give the leading role to some Lady Lemira, something Emeralda was only thinking about at such an important time when she needed to strengthen her own position in high society. Emerald, lowering her head, explained that she thought it would be better to assist Lady Reina behind the scenes. The Marquise recalled that she had already told her daughter more than once not to get so carried away in playing at friendship with this Duke's daughter. The Marquise said that Emerald seemed not to understand the seriousness of the situation. She asked if Mr. Kyrian had ever responded to the letters Emerald had sent him, even though her mother had warned her not to rely solely on an unfinished spell. For this spell to work, the target had to have at least basic sympathy. At this charity ball, Emerald had to make a lasting impression on the ducal couple. Whether Emerald was the organizer or not, she was destined to be the main star of the evening. Emeralda couldn't object to her mother. The days at the academy went on as usual. Emeralda asked Reina how serious she was about her intentions. "Yes, that's exactly it," Reina answered decisively. Their charity ball will become a performance venue for children. She wanted to give these children a new experience and the opportunity to gain self-confidence, and of course they would raise funds at the same time to build a school. After all, they are currently teaching these children temporarily, but it would be great if the children could go to a normal school. Of course, they won't force the children to perform if they don't want to, but many children enthusiastically volunteered to perform. There were a lot of people who wanted to participate. The children wanted to perform and show off to their friends. They even argued about who could perform better. With a smile, Raina asked Enna if the girl was going to perform too. Enna stood with Lady Douglas, her arms wrapped around her and not letting go of her hand. The girl said that she didn't know if she could perform well, and Raina thought that it was Enna, oddly enough, who really lacked self-confidence. "You can handle it," an unexpected voice said. This was said by Lady Douglas. She leaned towards the girl and in response to her doubts, said that if not Enna, then who? Enna shouted that if the teacher said so, then she would definitely perform. A woman wrapped in a shawl hastened to address Lady Douglas. She wanted to talk to her alone and apologized for calling her aside, but she wanted to thank her at all costs. She was very grateful that Lady Douglas had taken such good care of Anne, because the fact was that this girl had once had a very similar injury to Lady Douglas. After her parents died, she was given to relatives, and they completely abandoned the girl, saying that she was dirty. So, even after Enna was taken to the shelter, she developed an obsession with being dirty and needing to be washed constantly. But this time, after spending time with Lady Douglas, it seems the girl was able to completely overcome her trauma. So the woman was determined to say thank you to Lady Douglas. "Oh, come on, don't bother," said Lady Douglas, and finally the day of the charity ball arrived. "Lady Douglas," said one of the ladies approaching the girl. Lemira expressed hope that the girl would definitely come today. "Try your best there," she said in a commanding tone. Lady Douglas thought about that conversation with the headmistress of the orphanage. The woman then caught up with her at a run, just to thank her for taking care of the girl. Now Lemira was saying that she had heard that the Douglas family was not doing well at the moment, and in a situation like that, they needed to stick together, so they just needed to do as she asked, and she would put in a good word for her father, saying that Lady Douglas had been a great help to her. Lady Douglas asked what she should do, and Lemira told her how things were. One naughty maid will steal the Duchess's necklace, and Lady Douglas will slip it into that commoner's pocket without her noticing. And at the moment of her performance, it will be necessary to cut this pocket with a knife. The necklace will need to fall out right in front of everyone. During the celebration, everyone was discussing Lady Raina's dress, saying that it was the latest model from Madame Diol. But what else could one expect from the Istirs? Just think, they turned this gloomy shelter into a fairy tale palace. Raina, in her dress, curtsied as she introduced herself to the guests. The guest was His Majesty the King of Xia, and he said he was pleased to meet her. He said he had been told that Lady Raina had organized the ball. Raina thought that this man was Hiss's father. She told him that she tried her best, even though she knew it was not enough. The king replied that this was wonderful. Education had always interested him, and he was also forced to admit that the idea of this ball was worthy of praise. Raina smiled and said that it was actually Hiss's idea, as the prince had always been interested in educational projects, and apparently he took after his father in this regard. But Hiss stopped her and asked her father not to rush, since it seemed that some kind of misunderstanding had occurred here, since Raina herself had come up with and implemented everything, from beginning to end. The king said it was all quite impressive. He suggested it wouldn't be easy, but Raina was quick to assure him that she was simply doing the best she could. "Okay," said the king, and suggested that they see how everything would go. After this conversation, Raina told Hiss that she almost died of fear, and the prince replied that he did not even notice. Beaming, Raina said that Hiss simply couldn't help but agree with her. It was wonderful that the ball had turned out to be in keeping with His Majesty's interests. It seemed that he really cared about education. Hiss asked if Lady Raina had arranged this ball only to please his father, and the girl replied that of course she had. Raina said that this was her first official event as the prince's bride, so she simply had to make everything absolutely perfect. Raina laughingly asked why Hiss had started denying it like that, since she had been deliberately trying to single him out, and for some reason he had started denying the obvious. Hiss replied that he had not had any opportunity to meet her recently. Reina thought that she was engaged to Hiss only on paper, but she had gone and organized everything without her knowledge. She said that perhaps she had acted selfishly and asked for forgiveness if her initiative had somehow offended the prince, but Hiss hastened to assure her that in no case did he understand how anyone could be offended by Lady Reina, who had tried so hard for him. But he said she didn't have to work so hard without a break, and she didn't need to lie at all to shield him. Hiss had no intention of using his name as a shield for Reina. He leaned so close to the girl. They froze opposite each other. Reina asked what the prince meant when he said he didn't want to be a shield for her. She said with a smile that Hiss was the best partner for her. She asked him not to worry and assured him that she always repays kindness with kindness, and then asked him to simply trust her. Hiss repeated her words about her partners somewhat thoughtfully, and then he also smiled and said that it was good. We had an agreement, because they were the best team. "Madam Teacher, Lady Douglas," a clear childish voice suddenly rang out. Enna, in her smart dress, looked at Lady Douglas and asked if she was very worried. Then she said that it wasn't worth it, because they would do just fine. Lady Douglas assured that she was not at all worried, because in the end her job was only to ask questions, and, most importantly, that Enna did not let her down. Enna assured that the teacher could rely on her and would not disappoint her. "That's good," said Lady Douglas. Enna followed where her teacher was looking. She asked Lady Douglas if it was she, and then she clarified that she was talking about the scoundrel who called Lady Douglas a dirty woman. Enna said that the lady had a very ugly face. Enna took Lady Douglas by the hand and said that the teacher no longer needed to be afraid of anything. Enna will always be with her now. She promised that she wouldn't let anyone hurt her. Lady Douglas did not know what to say in response to all this. She hugged the girl and said that it was okay. We had an agreement. This little girl promised her protection. "Lady Douglas, you are ready," they soon called out to her. Lemira approached her and said that she had already stolen the Duchess's necklace, and then asked if their agreement was still valid. She ordered that it be planted in the pocket of that commoner when she went on stage. It was important that everyone saw how vile and vicious these plebeians were, and if everything worked out, Lady Douglas would be rewarded. Lemira assured that this award would be much more valuable than any trinkets. She said that she was counting on Lady Douglas. But Lady Douglas suddenly said that she could not do this, which surprised Lemira very much. Lemira asked what nonsense she was talking about, but Lady Douglas firmly replied that she herself had heard that she refused to do this. Lemira said that Lady Douglas had gone completely mad. "It seems so," Lady Douglas replied. "Just try to touch Enna," said Lady Douglas, and promised that she would never let it go. She turned to leave, but Lemira tried to stop her. "How dare you!" she shouted after her. Lemira exclaimed that her former friend had completely lost all sense of shame, was hanging out with all sorts of riffraff, had forgotten her place, and it seemed simply disgusting. She screamed that all this was making her incredibly angry and dropped the necklace. She bent down to pick it up, although she had absolutely no idea what to do with it now, where to put it now. It was at that moment that someone called out to her. "What are you doing here?" asked the commanding voice. Lemira turned around in fear. She didn't expect to meet anyone here. But it turned out to be the Marquise Magin, who asked what the girl was doing there while the celebration was about to begin. The Marquise immediately noticed what Lemira was trying to hide. She asked if it was Lady Annery's necklace. They said that she got it from her great-aunt, and it was very expensive. The Marquise Magin asked how it ended up with Lemira, because that simply couldn't be possible, for such a noble lady to take someone else's thing without asking. Lemira hastened to assure that she would never do such a thing. Lemira said she just wanted to put the necklace back because she found it by accident. The Marquise repeated her words anxiously, and then said that it was unlikely that the necklace could have fallen by itself. It meant that someone had stolen it. Lemira replied that the Marquise simply could not imagine how skillfully the children from the orphanage picked other people's pockets. Recently, one ran away so quickly that it was simply impossible to catch him in time. "My God, is this possible?" exclaimed the Marquise. She said that they must immediately go and sort this out, because the guilty needed to be punished as soon as possible. Lemira replied that she had no evidence, and the Marquise Maginot agreed that it might look as if Lady Lemira herself was the thief. The Marquise said that, nevertheless, her conscience did not allow her to close her eyes to this incident. She assured Lady Lemira that she would help her. To move the necklace with magic, it was necessary to be close to the target. She pointed at Enna and asked if this was the child, and then said that now they should try to get closer. The Marquise expressed doubt that this would work, because the lady who looked after this child seemed very caring, so if Lady Lemira wanted to succeed, she would have to try hard. "Yes, I'll try," said Lemira, completely unaware that she was being eavesdropped on. Kirian heard these words and sighed, lamenting that such clingy people were always hanging around his sister. He really wanted to jump out of his hiding place and deal with all these people, but the next moment he had to hide again. The Duke and Duchess passed by, discussing the reception. They did not know who exactly had organized it, but they thought it had been wonderful and very useful. Kirian thought that his father seemed to have already noticed that he was here, but as soon as his mother saw him, she would turn everything here upside down just to catch him. Kirian knew that this time he wouldn't get off with house arrest, which he had already escaped countless times. But now he couldn't just up and go home because his sister needed him. She told him so enthusiastically about how she went to classes and then was in the orphanage. There was no way Kirian could refuse such a life now. By avoiding his mother, he will deal with these annoying people. The waiter walked past the bushes with a tray containing glasses and a bottle of wine. Suddenly he staggered and spilled the wine. At this time, Lemira was closely watching Enna, who was walking among the guests. She needed to get close enough to the girl for the magic to work. After all, if they notice her, they will think that the thief is Lady Lemira herself. "Who will run in the ballroom?" Lady Douglas asked loudly. "Stop!" she screamed a moment later when she realized who it was. She saw Lemira quickly catching up with Enna, but she didn't understand why she was doing it. Lemira's path was suddenly blocked by a tray with glasses full of wine. She had to stop before reaching her intended goal. Lemira practically crashed into the tray, losing her footing. "How dare some servant!" she exclaimed, blushing and almost crying. But she didn't have time to do anything with the waiter. Just as she didn't have time to catch up with that girl, everyone had disappeared. "Where is that scoundrel?" she screamed, while Lady Douglas ran up to her, wanting to find out what Lemira was doing. Kirian, dressed as a waiter, stood right next to him, pretending that he had nothing to do with it. What a difficult thing this girl has brought, thought Kirian. If his mother weren't here, he could have acted openly and would have already eliminated her. But apparently we'll have to kidnap her secretly in order to sort everything out. At that moment he noticed the figures of his parents and quickly ducked, hiding behind the backs of the guests. Kirian thought that it seemed like his maneuver had been noticed. The Duke turned to his wife and suggested that she go and find Reina. Kirian realized that his father was trying to cover for him. He had just come up with a great idea. Kirian himself again saw Lemira rapidly heading somewhere. If it weren't for her father, he would have definitely missed her. This girl runs too fast. Kirian thought that, of course, he hated to resort to this, but he had no choice. He slid behind one young man and, covering his mouth, pulled him aside. Once they were away from the other guests, Kirian loosened his grip. "Young master?" asked his captive, turning around. He said he heard that the young master had run away from home because he was going through puberty, but he couldn't understand why he was here. Then he asked whether it was necessary to drag the person by force. Couldn't he just ask? Kirian replied that he was indeed a runaway youth who might have wished to act differently, but unfortunately he needed help too much. At this time, Lady Emeralda winced from a headache. She approached the elder Marquise Magine. She asked if her mother had called her just now. The Marquise pointed out the girl to her daughter, and Emerald recognized Enna. The Marquise said that it was true. That was the child's name. The Marquise remarked that she had just seen the girl hide a table knife in her pocket, but Emerald couldn't believe it. It seemed like the girl wanted to play with him, but this could not be allowed. It was too dangerous. The Marquise believed that Emerald could talk to the girl as a teacher. Emeralda hastened to fulfill her mother's request and prevent something unpleasant from happening. The Marquise watched her go. A smile played on her lips. Catching a thief who stole an expensive necklace sounded good for saving the hero's reputation, and it was time for her daughter to become the main character. "Wait, Enna," Emerald said, sitting down on the ground next to the girl. At this moment, the magic of the Marquise Magine came into effect. Emerald asked Enna why she put such a dangerous thing in her pocket. Enna replied that she hadn't taken anything dangerous and that she had nothing in her pockets. The girl pretended not to understand, but Emerald was worried about her and could not turn a blind eye to it. Lady Douglas assured that she and Enna were together every minute, but Emerald insisted on checking anyway, at which time the Marchioness found the owner of the necklace, Madame Annemarie. She asked if this was the necklace the lady had lost and pointed to Enna. Emerald promised to buy the girl a better toy and again asked Enna to return the knife. Enna again asked what kind of knife. Lady Annemarie looked at them and gasped loudly. "My necklace!" she exclaimed excitedly. Emerald couldn't understand where the necklace suddenly appeared in Enna's pocket. Mom said the girl took a butter knife from the table, not a piece of jewelry. Instantly, spectators began to gather, discussing how Lady Emeralda had just taken the missing necklace from the pocket of that commoner, and yet Lady Annemarie had always treasured it so much. It was such a wonderful jewel. The elder Marquise Magine looked at this scene with triumph and thought that the girl was caught. All eyes were on her, and Emerald guessed that this was her mother's trick. Emerald understood that her mother had decided to draw attention to her person by discrediting the poor child. Enna would undoubtedly now be seen as a thief in the eyes of society. Emerald could not allow this to happen, and therefore exclaimed that the girl was absolutely innocent. Lady Douglas hastened to add that all of this was clearly a setup. Enna had done nothing wrong, and it was all Lady Lemira's doing. "What? My?" Lemira's indignant voice rang out. She asked why Lady Douglas was trying to involve her in this story. Lemira suggested with a smile that the reason for the accusation might be the discord in their relationship, but one cannot groundlessly denigrate a person's name over such a trifle. She asked if Lady Douglas had any evidence. Lemira exclaimed that it was all some kind of vile injustice. Just think, she was accused of stealing because of some simpleton. Lemira said that she couldn't understand who would even think of organizing such a charity event, at which point Reina came in and asked if these complaints were directed at her personally. The Duchess, standing behind her, also wanted to know what kind of a mess they were making here. Reina asked her not to worry because she would figure everything out herself. The Duke also assured the Duchess that Reina was capable of sorting everything out herself. Reina thought that if the Duchess intervened, the situation would, of course, be resolved, but in that case, Reina herself would be remembered by everyone as a spineless girl who couldn't even cope with organizing an event. She was absolutely sure of it, but her mother would probably handle the conflict much better, so Reina really wanted to go home. And why was she always so lucky, this Lady Lemira again? And Reina just wants a measured and rich life. She just needs to pay back Hiss, and she will disappear right away. "How timely you have come," exclaimed Lady Lemira. She stated that the girl Reina brought stole an expensive necklace. Reina asked if there was evidence. Lemira replied that everyone present witnessed the jewelry being taken out of the girl's pocket. The Marchioness said that her daughter Emeralda also immediately suspected something was wrong. She asked Lady Reina not to be sad, because no one could have predicted such an outcome. She was just showing kindness, because she has a pure heart. The Marquise Magine pretended to support Reina, but in reality she was simply trying to humiliate her. It was just unclear why she would do this. Reina said that everything was fine. There was no reason to be sad. The Marquise said that it was all thanks to her daughter that the thief had now been caught. "You're wrong," Reina replied, shielding the frightened girl. She said that Enna did not steal the necklace. Reina asked if they would believe her if she gave them proof. Of course, she didn't have them, but they could be created, and in this world only authorities could do that. At that moment, someone covered Reina's mouth with their hand and declared that they had evidence. "Hiss!" Reina exclaimed in surprise. The prince asked if the lady was going to ask the Duchess for help. Reina assured with a smile that not at all. Hiss whispered to her that he would sort it out for his lady. He turned to Mrs. Annemarie. He asked if she had accidentally spilled any wine today, and Mrs. Annemarie replied that no, she hadn't even touched it. Hiss invited everyone to look at the necklace. There were obvious traces of wine on it, and it's unlikely that this little girl would drink it. Lemira asked how they could be sure of this, because who knew what could be expected from such an ill-mannered child? Reina replied that she was very strict about this, as children should not touch alcohol even by mistake. Hiss said that, among other things, the marks on the necklace were quite large, indicating that whoever stole it likely stained their own clothing as well. The real culprit's outfit should have huge stains on it. "Really?" Lemira exclaimed, feeling unkind glances directed at her. Everyone immediately remembered that last time Lady Lemira seemed to have praised this necklace very much. Many had heard this. She said that she would like to see it at the next evening, too. There was also the incident during the engagement when she wore Lady Reina's bracelet, which was completely shameless behavior. Lemira couldn't stand it and simply started running away. Reina felt like she was experiencing déjà vu, and she admired her tenacity, as Lemira knew perfectly well what the outcome would be, yet she still continued to hatch some kind of plot. At that moment, Reina felt someone take her hand. Enna wanted to ask her for forgiveness, because all this was happening because of her. Reina and Lady Douglas began to dissuade the girl, as she was not guilty of anything. Lady Douglas asked the girl not to say that, because she had done nothing wrong. "That's right." Madame Annery's voice reached them. She came up to Enna and apologized, and then said that it was all her own fault because she should have taken better care of her things, and as a result, all the anger fell on the innocent child. Reina thought with surprise that it seemed like for the first time in her life in this world, she was seeing a well-bred person in noble society. She bowed to Madame Annery and asked her forgiveness for allowing such a misunderstanding to occur, but Madame Annery said that it was only she who should repent. Reina said she was truly sorry. Mrs. Annery looked at her and smiled. She suggested that instead of looking for someone to blame, we should simply enjoy the children's wonderful performance. She bowed before Enna and told the girl to try hard and let her performance overshadow this unpleasant incident. "Yes," the girl exclaimed joyfully. Reina meanwhile turned to Hiss. She wanted to thank him for his timely assistance. The prince replied that it was not worth thanking. He simply did what he had to. Reina said that he was being modest again, but he had done absolutely excellent detective work. Reina suggested that he finally relax. Then she asked how he knew that there would be wine stains on the necklace. Hiss didn't immediately find an answer. He then explained that he had simply seen the waiter knock over a tray of drinks by chance. Reina was surprised that this was all he needed to know to conduct the investigation. She called him Sherlock Holmes and said that this was wonderful. Hiss replied that he did not know what she was talking about, but thought the lady was exaggerating. He said that he simply had to do this, and these words were heard by Kyrian, who was watching them secretly. Kyrian thought that this was precisely why he hadn't wanted to involve Hiss in his plan. But he simply had no choice, because his high status gave special weight to the prince's words, and besides, Hiss was a man who would gladly stand up for Kyrian's sister, and he was also the only one who could definitely protect her.